Excuse me, I was muted. Shalom, shalom, friends, and thank you for joining us. Blessings to you all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Welcome to this episode of Un-Apologetics, a show where we are unapologetic about apologetics, and I am your host, CJ Cox. This is a after show that we are having after my debate that I just had over on Standing for Truth's channel. We were talking about the 10 Commandments and whether or not they are ethical. I don't know if anybody is here from that particular debate, but if you are, shalom, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on it real quick, and then we're going to go ahead and open the room up here for discussion. But before we do any of that, of course, I'm going to go ahead and say a brief prayer. So if anybody would like to join me, I'd certainly encourage you to do so. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for everything you blessed us with today, Lord. I want to thank you for the opportunity to have this debate, Lord Jesus, and also to have these conversations here with people afterwards, Lord. I want to thank you for all of the luxuries you've blessed us with, Lord Jesus, and I just want to use this for nothing more than the glorification of your kingdom, Lord, and deeper revelation to you, Lord. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's holy name and give you the glory. Amen. All right. So I may be having like small coughs every now and then, just so you guys know. I am actually a little bit sick at the moment, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, just want to let you know about that. So what did I think about this debate? Obviously, I was in the debate, right? So to a certain extent, I might be a little bit biased, but what did I actually think about the debate? I thought it was a good conversation. Per usual, Michael is a good person to talk to. He, I believe, is an honest interlocutor, kind man, willing to actually have a legitimate conversation, all those sorts of things. I very much appreciated that. So definitely want to give that credit where credit is due. I do also think that there are certain issues that his particular version of moral realism does better with than other atheist versions of moral realism. In other words, though I think there's problems with the well-being model, and I'll even get into some of those today, I think it's better than some of the other models that we tend to have, right? I did think that I had a fairly solid argument. I thought that when we came to the actual individual points of the conversation that I did, at least in my opinion, a good job of defending. But I also thought I could have done a lot better, to be honest with you. It is my own view that I was a little bit foggy in the debate, and that has a little bit to do with the fact that I am sick, unfortunately. But I felt like I could have been a little bit quicker on my feet, a little bit better speaker, all that kind of stuff. But I do think that the ultimate point was made, which was that it does seem to me like there's not anything immoral about these laws. At best, you could say they could be more moral. And even then, when we go through the individual laws, I think there's pretty solid arguments to suggest that each law does have a justification to be there, absolutely. Even if we're not presupposing a Christian worldview. I was very happy to hear him kind of concede on a point that I didn't think would be conceded on, if I'm being honest, which was that the foundations, you need to be in line with them. Otherwise, you're not actually going to build a proper morality. I thought personally that kind of ended the argument as far as replacing laws 1 through 4. I'm sure Michael would disagree with me on this, but it's my opinion that if it is true that you must have the right foundation in order to build your morality in a proper fashion, and if it is also true that morality comes from the Bible, then the only logical conclusion would be those laws 1 through 4, those more religious, ritualistic kind of laws, honor the Sabbath, don't take the Lord's name in vain, things of that nature, right? It would make sense why those would have to be there and why you would be in danger of building an immoral or unethical code for yourself if you did not actually adhere to those particular laws. And of course, I know he disagrees with me on that foundation, but the fact that we agree that you need the proper foundation to get to the right answers, I think works wonders. But nonetheless, that's sort of my opinions on it. Thought I did good. Thought I could have done better. In the end, I thought that the point was made properly for the theist side, but also that there could have been better, less foggy performance. But nonetheless, that's sort of my opinions on it. Don't want to say too much about it because I participated. I do have Jungle Jargon here with us today. Anybody else who wants to join,
hello.
Link both in the description and in the live chat. And Shalom, Jungle.
Shalom. See you.
How's it going?
I caught the tail end. I caught the tail end of the discussion. It seemed pretty cordial, but I didn't. I don't know. The Ten Commandments seems straightforward to me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I certainly, I even said in my opener that I thought the best we could get for the atheist side was potentially we could get an argument that the Ten Commandments could be more ethical, which in the end that did end up kind of being a big portion of his argument, I think. But more ethical is not the same thing as unethical, right? And even then, I would dispute him on the more ethical point. But the fact kind of remains, right, that if you're saying the law could be more ethical, that's certainly not by any stretch saying that it, as it stands, is unethical, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's worked good for us all these years, and we never even questioned it. At least I never did, and it's from God, and we can trust God that He knows, what we need to know. And of course, the commandments expose our inability or our, evil tendencies anyway, and the fact that we need faith in order to be able to keep the commandments.
Yeah, real quick, want to acknowledge Alec. I actually share your last name, fun fact.
I know. I think we're from the Scotland area.
Yeah, that is definitely where, at least where my portion of the family is too. So I guess that'd probably be for most Coxes, I assume.
Yeah, they either came in through into the Americas through South Carolina or Virginia, one of the two ports.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, did you? I thought I saw you in the comments, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Did you watch the debate?
Yeah, I was there. Hey, just one question: do you go by JC Truth as well? Is that you? JC
No,
Truth. Oh, okay. I was just thinking because you're on the same level. The protector of basically the word of Christ. So it's interesting. JC Truth, kind of with the JC thing. I thought you might have that pseudonym, but yeah, I caught it, and the defense of atheism is so weak. It's just basically because they really don't have a moral standard. They go to the social construct over thousands of years of civilization, social, but people still eat their babies in certain countries. People still sacrifice their children. People still have arranged marriages in different cultures. People still have what we were warned against in the Bible. Slavery, things like that, they take out of context. There's a whole bunch of, I got bum rushed last night on Praise I Am That I Am's by a bunch of old earth people that it was just incredible. I mean, the idiocy. 5-on-1. And it just got so ridiculous because I can't remember the one guy's name. The one guy's name, I got in the argument basically of Paul, and he said he knew all the travels of Paul, so I questioned him on it. And I said, did you know that Paul went to Great Britain? And then he starts going off, Great Britain didn't exist back in the Roman days. I said, well, I use the colloquialism of Great Britain because Great Britain exists so that you would know where it is on the global map. That right. Paul traveled all the way to Great Britain from Spain, as he went through Spain into Great Britain. He also went to the East, so it was really interesting that he just started pounding me on it. I said, just Google it, because when I use my phone, I can't share anything, right? Like I'm using it right now. All I can do is just show myself. I can't do anything in the comments other than inside comments to, people in the chat. on screen. But so he said, "Oh, post that," and I said, "I can't. All you need is Google it. Just Google, Roman Empire at 40 about 40 AD is when Britannia became conquered and everything like that. So Paul would have easily have been able to go and preach in a Roman because he was a Roman citizen. He would have easily been able to preach up in Britannia, taken over by the Gauls, which were also part of the Roman Empire. And they hammered me, and lo and behold, I stayed on there my phone died, and then I came back in, and then they finally looked it up, and they said, "Oh yeah, Britannia was part of the Roman Empire at that time, so it is quite possible that Paul." But they never acknowledged it because they lost that argument. Then they moved on to basically the whole old Earth thing, that I don't know anything. They questioned my PhD and all this stuff. They gave me a ribose directory of glucose, and I said, "It's not a very good sugar for you to ask, but yeah, that's not what we used in the experiment. We used basically glucose, because how I got banned basically, or blackballed from Baylor University, was my thesis on glucose, that life cannot exist without glucose. So where the glucose come from in a primordial soup that God somehow created, and where did our spirit come from there? They can't answer those questions. So from the atheism view, the Ten Commandments means nothing to them, because they think it was part of the Code of Hammurabi, which has been debunked. I believe, they also say now it's from the Egyptians, but, they don't understand that Joseph was second in command. He was basically, the Pharaoh didn't have to do anything. Joseph ran all of Egypt at the time, talking about Jacob's son. And, he ran all of Egypt. And so he would have had, the laws from Jacob, and he would have instituted those into Egyptian rule, where there was no slavery at that time until Joseph died. 200 years pass, you get a new Pharaoh, and then he says, "Oh, these Hebrews are taking us over because they're breeding like flies. We need to put them into slavery and start building stuff." And that's how that whole slavery thing came into. But they will take any out, and I got to tell you, your debate, you handled it very well. You were very nice. I'll just say that you were very nice. You didn't you didn't have a problem handling it, but there were a couple of times where you could have flipped the script on them and just a little bit harder. Just not just be nice about it, but just saying. But everything else was great. You won the debate. There was nothing he could rely on. He just kept going on about child abuse, which he was going on about child abuse. So it suspects to me, because I've known a lot of adults now that were abused as children, which right now I would predict right now that 80% of children are child abused in the United States of America alone. Either sexually or mentally or any other form of abuse that you can put onto a child. Right. As they're growing in structure, 80%. And you can see this in the millennialism, and the turning away from God, because where was God to protect me as a child kind of enters into the psychosis. And when he kept bringing that up, I kept thinking he must have been abused as a child. I don't think his parents were good. It may not be true, but that's what was sticking in my head. Why is he bringing it up so much and sticking to that child abuse thing? Instead of, he could have picked any other of the Ten Commandments, but he stuck with the child abuse thing, did he not?
Yeah, and the thing that I thought was kind of interesting about it is, I don't personally see why there is this because he brought up, he thought that these are absolute, but they're only absolute sometimes when it's convenient for us. And it's like, I understand why you might think that, but I don't think that's a proper understanding of what I'm actually saying, right? Because it's not that you don't have an absolute obligation to honor your father and mother. That is true. It's right. Just the case that honoring your father and mother is of less value than, say, you being beaten to a pulp, which is why we have things like CPS, right?
Exactly.
And to me, I kept trying to bring up the numbers example, because I think numbers really show, how values operate in an absolute sense. 10 diamonds is greater than 5 diamonds. It doesn't mean either one is any more or less absolute in its value, right? It is absolutely 5 diamonds. And in fact, it's so absolute that you can call it 14. And the only thing that will have changed is that 14 now means 5. You know what I mean? Because the 5
Right.
itself is still there.
I get that logic. I get it.
And
You still have the
so,
5 diamonds, whether you have 14 or not. You still have 5.
exactly.
I get it.
Exactly, right? And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so if that's the way that we know values work, like objective values, right, then it seems to me like law has to be the same way. And the Bible even says that, right? There's weightier measures, of the law.
Mm-hmm. And sticking to the commandments, because Jesus Christ mentions it 14 times, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Keep my commandments. And he's not talking. And I got in that discussion last night, and they misconstrued the whole fact that I was talking about the 613 laws as commandments. And no, I wasn't. I was saying there's 10 commandments that did not go away. The 613 laws went away when Christ died. So basically held by the law. The 10 commandments, love thy neighbor as thyself and love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, is basically the those are they boil down to 2 commandments. So if you love your God, you are going to treat your neighbor as yourself. Now, in all instances, we're imperfect and we get a bit, distraught, and things kind of go haywire sometimes where, it's a hectic day, whatever it may be, and you just have a mood and somebody triggers you. Pray ceasingly, I guess, is the remedy to that one.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, carry on. Thought I explained that.
Yeah, no, I think it's the interesting thing I think about these kinds of conversations a lot of times is that for the most part, it does seem to me like, everything relies to a certain extent on either exception or meaning like, well, what if this, parent is a bad parent? Or some level of like, well, what about this and why isn't it there? You know what I mean? And that one was actually really interesting to me because, when we got to the question about arranged marriages, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was, and it's even funny. I saw somebody in the comments, they said, how does this have anything to do with the 10 Commandments? And initially, you might not think that it did, but the reason that it did end up having so much bearing on the 10 Commandments is because what did that whole conversation end up showing? That it's not a ubiquitous law for all peoples at all times. There are absolutely occasions where the whole culture would be better off with arranged marriages, right? And so if you were to replace, say, the Sabbath with don't have arranged marriages, well, the Sabbath is something that all peoples at all times can adhere to and have equal ethical value from, meaning that we honor God as the creator, number one, and number two, that we have a rest day, right? And also you could add the worship day in there too, because we obviously go to church on Sundays. The point there being that those are good things that all people at all times can do, and it will stand the test of time, right? But the arranged marriage one, that's not the case. There's actually plenty of situations. In fact, there's entire eras of time that are hundreds and hundreds of years and take place over multiple nations, being involved in for them, arranged marriage actually was the more moral of the options. It's the same thing with slavery, right? The systems of slavery that you had set up in biblical Israel, if you were to outlaw those, would have caused problems not only for biblical Israel, but also for the next 1,500 to 3,500 potentially years, meaning that the law itself isn't one that stands the test of time, right? And I just think it's an important thing to point out, because it basically, I don't think Michael meant to do it, but I think he proved that the 10 Commandments really do stand the test of time as a foundation for all peoples. You know what I mean?
Well, he started using lint out of his pocket to say the proverbial. That's what his argument boiled down to, is everything but the 10 Commandments having some sort of a regulation to moral society, and them themselves being moral to you should not do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he started pulling the lint out of his pocket, and that's how that went. But you did a good job on that.
There's another way we can look at the commandments. The other way to look at the commandments is that you will not do this, you will not do that, you will not do something else that you should not do. In other words, you will be able to do everything that you should be doing. You can look at it negatively or positively too. I think
Right.
it's healthy to look at it in a positive way, because it's faith to be able to do what's right, you know.
And, you know, I hate to, talk over or whatever, but I just have to bring up the pornography problem. So it says, Jesus Christ said he took it up a notch from thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you, any man that look upon a woman with lust also has committed adultery in his heart. So, the problem with pornography, is immense right now. I mean, you got 8-year-olds popping on it now because they don't check for age anymore and all that. I've heard some, I don't know how they, obviously they can use the cookies and things like that. But, certain social medias, certain things like that are, pretty much children now are getting their phones at age, let's just say 11, 12, going off to elementary school still. So the adultery thing really upped it up a notch as far as even to look upon a woman with lust. And, last night it came up and I said, look, after my divorce, I did not look at another woman and want to sleep with her. I'll give a woman a compliment if we're in a general conversation, but I'm not going to walk up to a woman and say, hey, you look hot. Let's, do this. And that's what's going on in the society. And, look, it happened to me, at a point after my divorce. I tried to go out there and, redo it and all that stuff. And said, this just isn't working. I'm spending a lot of money and a lot of time on usefulness, or uselessness. Mm-hmm. So I made that decision that, there will come a time, there will be that time where I do meet somebody, but, God has a plan for me, and, I'm not going to be unequally yoked ever again. So, that's the major thing. So I don't look upon a woman. Now, it's hard for anybody to say, oh, yeah, sure, right. Yeah, okay, Alec, yeah, you're full of it, But no, I actually don't. It's something that I did have to train myself, my mind, to get off of that boat of, oh, I can imagine myself with that person or whatever it may be that, you come across that. And it even draws into, what Paul was saying about the, to the Thessalonians. So, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where it's talking in regards to adultery, it says, keep your vessel clean. And then it's talking about fornication. Okay. So basically, in those temples of Diana and all those other things that they were doing in the Greek land, also in Rome, the bathhouses and things like that, was not clean. Even though they were a bathhouse, what you were doing was uncleanliness. And so the whole point was, hey, look, you guys, I know you grew up in a culture where everything goes, and you go to the temple of Diana and you do your thing, and they got the temple prostitutes and cows and chickens and whatever you want to do it with. Don't do that, because you're ruining your vessel. And, it's so the 10 Commandments being a law given to man to follow a good society. There's a societal thing of, no, you shouldn't kill anybody. Well, the kill actually means murder. But, if you're defending yourself in your home and your family, you have the right to defend yourself. But just going out there and doing a Columbine, that's not, a good thing for any society. And you also have these new rules that you have that came down on the kids. They feel more confined in the school. You have police walking around at a lot of the school campuses that have to, be there on salary to keep these things from happening. And so there's a snowball effect that happens out of, somebody going in and doing some act like that. And then you can even go to adultery. Well, what does that cost? Well, you've got, single mothers trying to raise a child because the deadbeat dad, for a one night fling. Now you've got 9 months, or your other option is kill the child. and thou shalt not kill and adultery also come in together, do they not?
Say that last part one more time. It kind of roboted
Yeah.
for me a little bit.
Yeah, the commandment to thou shalt not kill and abortion, right,
Mm-hmm.
come in together, do they not? Because of a one night fling. Because of a one night fling, now you're 9 months pregnant and you're 4 months into it. You go to Planned Parenthood and they're going to solve that problem for you, right? And so they don't look at it as killing because they call it anything but a baby. They call it anything but they tried to get away with it's just a fetus. Well, fetus means child in the Latin. And then you go on to other things. So they've circumvented that and said, oh, well, under Roe versus Wade, it's not a person until it breathes. Well, it's breathing from the mother's, it's breathing from the mother.
Right.
It's just so anyway, those two commandments come into each other, which is basically thou shalt not kill and that, adultery. Those are combined in that instance.
Yeah, and I it's interesting. I kind of hinted towards that even in my opening statement. We didn't end up addressing it again, but not that particular link. The one that I had linked was how covetousness really is involved in each of them.
Well, that's the start. Yeah. Well, they all blend together, right?
Right. Exactly. You're not honoring the Lord when you're committing adultery, and you're coveting somebody when you're stealing from them, and so on and so forth. And the thing that I found really interesting about studying ethics, as and this isn't the debate itself, but just in my life, right? The thing that I always found incredibly interesting was that people don't have a whole lot of disagreement on ethics. It's not nearly as much as what people actually think, right? So, like, one of the things, and I even brought it up in this discussion, right, that like constantly comes up. In China they call it the Tao, and in Greek they call it the Logos. And I don't mean the same thing as necessarily what John is saying with Logos, right? Obviously that's different,
right?
But, it's not exactly the same thing, but Dharma is super similar in India. And the point kind of being that they all have this idea of there's some sort of detached, metaphysical, divine reasoning of some kind that we need to live in accordance with in order to be good people. And, they come to contradictory conclusions. Obviously the Tao Te Ching and Cynic philosophy cannot both be true. Right.
Right.
But it's kind of funny to me because it goes to show that when you look at these sorts of laws, like, for example, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Right. And then you look at people 1,000 years later trying to figure out what is this impersonal force that we have to try and get in line with. It's like, well, it's actually not impersonal. And God has told you already what you guys kind of know, but you're not quite there. You're not actually figuring it out, right? You're thinking about it like it's the Force from Star Wars or something like that, but that's not what it is. It's a being, and that being actually is personal. And he has laws and dictates and judgments and things like that, right?
Right.
And I don't know, it's just an interesting thing to me how so many people ended up adopting that.
My friend from Sri Lanka used to say, Dharma, karma, no harma.
Excuse me.
So that was it bounces back to you in some way, which, everything kind of boomerangs because, there were certain times in my life where I made bad decisions and they boomeranged right back and hit me in the back of the head. You think, oh, I got away with this thing. And then, it falls, 4 months, 6 months, maybe a year later, but it catches up with you in some shape or form that, if you do the right thing from the beginning, you have no fault. Now, somebody can falsely accuse you of something, of course, but if you didn't do it in the first place, there is no ramification. There was a time where I borrowed from Peter to pay Paul, and it came back to kick my butt just because of trying to make payments on certain things. And I learned the lesson. Hey, you gotta tell whoever you owe the debt to, can you wait 5 days until I can replenish my funds, because I have these other bills I would like to pay you along with those other bills. However, these are roof over my head. These are how I do my work. This is how, and you're just basically a credit card system where, basically I'm just borrowing off of your loan. But could you hold off for 5 or 6 days? And they'll generally say, yeah, we can do that. It's and I got in that stupid thing of, robbing Peter to pay Paul, which got me in trouble. And I learned not to do that. It's just like, wow, it's the same thing as stealing, in other words. Right?
Yeah, and I've even had my own personal experiences with that too. Especially with, one of the ones that I'll just even sort of admit, one of my personal flaws that I've had, right? Is, they're so lenient with medical debt that you can kind of, at least at this stage in American history, you can kind of just say no, you know what I mean? And just not pay it, and nobody's ever going to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's really easy to abuse if you don't have a conscience, you know what I mean? Because without that punishment, in fact, I'll just, be plain with it. I was in that mentality for some time, and it's even to the point of where not only would they not punish me for it, but I could still go to the same doctor. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
The same exact guy would still care for me knowing that I'm not going to pay him. And it was like, that's a dangerous situation to be in as a believer, because you almost trick yourself into no, it's fine. It's fine. When in reality, you're robbing this person. You're robbing this person of his, and I was robbing that person is really what I'm saying. Right.
Yeah.
And, that's actually interesting. My pastor was preaching about it one Wednesday evening. And, it didn't even strike me that I was doing that until that particular Wednesday. And then as soon as he had said it, I was like, man, I am a terrible person. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, I don't know, like, don't get me wrong. Like, not to say that that's like the worst thing anybody can do, but it was just like the sort of guilt of like, well, you're kind of being a jackass right now. I excuse my French, but you know what I mean?
It's easy to justify. It's easy to justify in the system. Same thing for me. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, have either of you had somebody that owed you money?
So go ahead.
What Alec was saying, I think, was interesting. You have to change your habits of thought and everything. And that's true. And the verse that has helped me a lot, or seems to mean a lot to me, is the one that says to guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it comes the issues of life. So even your thoughts will affect how you act, how you relate to people, everything. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, I
might have a delay here. Go ahead.
No, that was all I was saying. I just think it's really easy to justify medical stuff, with it not paying or whatever. It's kind of it's obviously a personal issue. I think it is wrong, like you're saying. It's almost like I think of it with having welfare in the modern sense, because it's when you can get away with it, it's easy to justify, and then with all the complications of the way the system's set up, and obviously we need to help people, but it's just kind of like school debt too. Like you get grants set up from the government, and then the schools just raise the price, so it just compounds the issue. So same kind of thing.
Yeah, no kidding.
And by the way, that's a whole another discussion about that.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah.
I did just want to say though, Shalom, Jamie. Did you catch the debate?
I did. It was good. I think it's typical for someone who's an atheist, I think, to kind of come up with these scenarios to deny the ethical principles or the moral principles in the Ten Commandments. And so it's easy to bring up these situations where you are stuck with a dilemma or something. And it's like, that doesn't negate the pristine or the principles that are underlying the idea of the Ten Commandments. But it gets hard to like pin them down on what's being said. I was going to ask you, I missed the very end, so I don't know if he asked my question or whatever. I presume he did, but did you or did he make the argument about kind of like I heard him say something about it should say no rape or something in there, and it seems to me that that's in a sense, coveting or stealing or whatever. Seems like that covers that. I don't know I was curious what you thought.
I don't recall that particular question, but it might have just been worded differently. And I'm just not recalling. But just to kind of give my own sort of, because he did have some things like that. He didn't mention rape in particular, but he did say, why is it that we couldn't have, like, for example, something against slavery or child abuse?
That's what I meant to say. I basically meant that's what I was meaning to say. I missed what he said or how you responded to that.
Well, and my it was a multifaceted response that I had to him. The first thing I was saying is that I thought that certain things that he might want in the 10 Commandments wouldn't be ubiquitous, especially throughout time. Like, for example, he brought up arranged marriage, and I don't think, arranged marriage is way too complicated of an issue to just say you can't do it. You know what I mean? I think God is obviously much more intelligent than we are. He would certainly understand that. I've brought up very often the royalty examples, right? Like if I'm a king, I have to pass over this entire nation over to my daughter and whoever she's going to marry, then you are absolutely damn sure that I am going to make sure that person is like cream of the crop. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not passing this on to the stoner, passing the kingdom on to the stoner in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did catch that part. Yeah, I thought you responded really well to that, like with his hypotheticals or, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, and it was just to say that, that I think almost all of the issues that he ends up wanting, and not even just him, just that atheists kind of want to add into the 10 Commandments, it's either addressed elsewhere, like, so for example, Deuteronomy 22 gives the death penalty for rape, or it's something that is not as cut and dry as they like to make it seem, like the arranged marriage situation or the servitude situation, as far as like, slaves and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like the people never want to consider the context, of when they were written and the way they're translated or the way they're explained or whatever. It seems to me that they're just like principles, and then you have to reason out circumstances because like you were saying about, I've kind of changed my thinking on arranged marriage ideas, probably because I'm old and single now, but in the context of that time, I don't know, if love is like a commitment, then we're kind of like spoiled in the sense that we have it so nice and we're so wealthy in a historical context that it's, yeah, like you said, it's like a what do you call it, like a privilege, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you can think of these scenarios where like a woman wouldn't want to marry the man her dad picks for her, but like if you really think about it, in a lot of senses, if the parents of the arranged marriage are like good people or whatever, then often I'm sure their wisdom would be actually helpful, and if they're thoughtful about what, like you said, who they're choosing and why. And I think I think there is major truth in the idea that you can grow to love somebody, and it can be a commitment, that real love is more so than initial attraction, which is obviously a benefit, and perhaps it's, I don't know. I think you can learn to be attracted to somebody, honestly, but anyway.
Yeah. And I think well, I'll be brief just because I don't want to get it, let other people respond to what I want to do and stuff. But I just think that it just goes to show, right, that in so many of these instances when somebody says, well, I think I could have done this better than God, it's like, okay, well, I'm not even 1 iota of a Google to the Googleth power of God, and yet I can find flaws in your improvement. So if I can find flaws in your improvement and God is infinitely ahead of me, then do you really think you could do better than what he did? You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, I think people sometimes they don't even understand what holy is, or holiness, perfection, righteousness. They're not even close to it. And they're trying to criticize God, It's
Yeah, you guys,
quite
do you guys,
amazing. Yeah.
how do you think of the way the New Testament describes the law or whatever? Like, what's the difference with the New Covenant and the Old Covenant? What changed about the law, do you think?
Well, actually, I know this is good. This is going to step on some toes a little bit, but I don't think anything changed. I think the only difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant is that we are not under the death penalty of those laws. But if you don't accept the New Covenant, you are still under the death penalty of those laws. Like, Christ did not do away with any of them, in my view. And this is why I take issue when people say, the laws are only for the Jews at that time. Certainly some of them are, right? Certainly the little Jew curls, as we call them, right? Where you don't shave the corners of your head. My little character here on my logo has it. That was certainly something that was meant only to distinguish Jews from other people. It was meant for somebody to look and say, hey, that guy looks weird, and notice him. You know what I mean? Because if you notice him, then you'll notice his lifestyle. And if his lifestyle is good, then you'll want to follow it, right? That's the sort of the whole point. But the majority of those laws, I think, are just as binding then as they were now. But as a Christian, you're not suffering from that binding. You know what I mean? And that's always been my interpretation of it. It's not so, like, for example, the tattoo thing. Tattoos are only mentioned one time in Scripture. If you are not a believer, then tattoos you literally are wearing your sin on your skin, right? If you are a believer, that sin doesn't apply to you, just like no other sin applies to you, because God has forgiven it. But if you're not under that blood, I firmly believe every single one of those laws you broke, you will be held accountable for.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think obviously there's a separation of the laws. This is where I have a difference with some of the more Hebrew roots type thinking on. They want to, like, not make a distinction between certain things, but it seems to me, and I think the reformers would agree with me even too, that the 10 laws, the 10 commandments are set apart in the sense that they're the moral. They're like the thing that a lot of the law flows from, and then we have, like, the laws of Moses that are were kind of like types and shadows, or setting apart the Israelites for what their mission was, but the principles probably in the most cases where they apply as a shadow or whatever, there's an object lesson there to be held in, or a principle to live by, but it's not so much strict. I think we are set apart. We're supposed to be set apart, but that's where it gets kind of like I talk to people about this, and they'll affirm that idea that I just said, and then they'll suddenly be using statements from Paul to, like, suggest we're not under the law, as in, like, the principles don't apply. And I just, it's confusing a lot of the time, I think, where people are coming from or how they're applying Paul, because you don't want to make him into a schizophrenic, is what I like to say. Because it's got to be the death penalty. That when it talks about the law of sin and death, I think that's referring to Jesus taking our penal substitution, basically. And that's what we're not under, the fact that we've broken the laws and we have to be killed for it.
Right, because Jesus Christ fulfilled the law as a man, dying on the cross. So he was the sacrifice, the final sacrifice for those 613 laws. The 10 commandments are, like you said, they're sanctified, they're set apart.
Right, the 613 meaning like the modern concept of,
Leviticus and Deuteronomy and all that, yeah, where the Pharisees added to them, and
right, yeah. You guys, CJ, do you how do you parse that? Because it seems like the is the 613, I would presume, is that considered part of the 10 Commandments part of that, though, when they count that?
Well, so the 613 mitzvot are the 10 commandments would certainly be part of those in that, they are like one of the numbers, right? Because mitzvot just means commandment, and the 613 are just supposed to be all the different commandments of God that we see in the legal code, which of course the 10 commandments would be considered part of that. The thing is, though, is there are absolutely what appear to be separations within the book. I personally, I love the Torah. It is one of my favorite reads, and I've probably read it now. I mean, I don't even know, an uncountable number of times. And it's striking. One of the things you find is that God actually, he's quite clear, right, when he wants certain people to follow certain things. So, like, for example, when he's giving out the laws for the Levites, he doesn't just tell you that these are the laws for the Levites in the beginning, but in the beginning of the chapter, in the middle of the chapter, in the end of the chapter, and then 5 chapters later, and then in the next book, Deuteronomy, you know what I mean? Like he's very clear. These laws apply to the Levites. These laws apply to the Aaronites. These laws, so on and so forth. And so it is fair to say there are certain laws that weren't meant to apply to everybody, for sure. But it's also, very clear that a lot of those laws absolutely are meant to apply to everybody. And it's also clear, kind of like you said, Jamie, that the ones that don't apply to everybody still have typology and precedent that does apply to everybody. So for example, the tattoo law, right, in Leviticus, the tattoo law is not given with any sort of an asterisk, right? Nothing in that chapter is given with an asterisk. It's not just the practices of, I can't say nothing in that chapter. That's not true. But a lot of the things in that chapter are not given with asterisks, right? These are just the laws which you, the Israelites, are not supposed to do. You don't cut yourself for the dead. You don't tattoo your skin, so on and so forth. Those laws, I think, are binding on us today, right? It's just that God has provided us mercies through those. And, sometimes those laws are ceremonial, even. Like, for example, if you don't accept the sacrifice of Jesus, well, then you should be sacrificing lambs. Now, of course, you shouldn't be sacrificing lambs because we have the once and for all sacrifice of Jesus. So there is a catch-22 there in that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? But the point is, if you haven't accepted the atonement, well, where's your atonement coming from? You're not even making an attempt to atone. You're not even going, doing nothing on Yom Kippur. You're doing nothing as far as the incense and the showbread and the sacrifice of lambs is concerned. You'll be held accountable for that, I think, even though that's a ceremonial law.
Yeah, when I've heard the debates or dialogues between Christians like Michael Brown and like a Jewish interlocutor, that's got to be a point of concern because the things they point to kind of shoo away the idea that they need blood atonement is kind of weak, in my opinion. Like, I think they just point to like some statement or idea of like, some nebulous idea of like the Jewish people suffering or something that like atone for it or whatever, or like a verse about God being willing to forgive sins or whatever, and to try to like push that aside. It's troubling, I guess I would say. But yeah, the ceremonial laws, there are those distinctions, right? Like dietary laws, ceremonial, and it's interesting. Like, I need to brush up on some of the typology on the. I know my my denomination I grew up in, has a pretty cool teaching on like what the different festivals and the different furniture in the temple, what they kind of stand for and stuff. It's pretty interesting.
Sorry, Alec. I thought it looked like you were trying to speak there. Was I?
Oh, no, not at all. It was fine. The only thing I was going to say was a little scenario that I know a person that works in social services here. And you have, me living in Southern California, you have a lot of Mexicans that come across the border. And one thing that allows them to come in is a pregnant woman. And generally that pregnant woman will be 15, 16 years old. And they know that the father impregnated the child in order to bring him in. And so the state allows, because she's pregnant, them to get on Medicare. And that Medicare covers that child from birth to age 19, but it also covers the mother for, I think it's over the 9 months, because you have some problems afterwards. So I think it's a whole year or something like that. So, you have state laws now that allow people to come into the country, that really don't belong, but since they're pregnant, well, and then the father and the mother that come along with that because of that child that's inside the daughter's womb. And the person was telling me that sees it 100 times a week, and it's a way for them to gain entry into the United States. So you have somebody committing incest in order to get into a better country. So it doesn't seem so bad, but it's just the way that they came in. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like okay, we got to take care of the child, this and that. So that's a burden on the taxpayers for these people that have just come into the country, because now they're going to be issued, food stamps. They're going to be issued medical care. They're going to be issued cash, for monthly, because of the child needs and the prenatal needs, things like that. But the family's going to share those. You get what I'm saying? It kind of compounds itself off of the reasoning of somebody coming into the United States. And how are we going to get there? Well, we got to get the daughter pregnant, because the mother's not going to get pregnant again. So we got to get the daughter pregnant in order to get in. And that just baffled me. I was just like, are you serious?
That's a dilemma. I mean, you do help the pregnant women are some of the most vulnerable people. But then on the other hand, it's not that I don't have a heart for that, but for those people. But at the same time, when you make that way open, then you have people essentially putting themselves in a bad situation to reap that benefit. But at the same time, you don't want, so you don't want to like propagate that idea, but you don't want to that's a really hard moral dilemma in my mind. I don't know.
It really is, but they created it that way. You know what I'm saying? That the government created it that way. It used to be, you can't come in, you got to rely on your own country, which would be Mexico in this instance. And then they loosened the laws about the mid 90s, when they really loosened the laws, because they tried to go to the universal health care here in the United States. Pretty harsh. And so now that you have a lot more HMOs like Kaiser and Covenant and places like that are basically take a lot of Medicare, take a lot of Medicaid, older people and people that can't afford the insurance, or their business doesn't offer insurance, or whatever it may be. So you have a lot of those that kind of take that burden for prenatal care, childbirthing, and then afternatal care, postnatal. So it's a huge moral dilemma. I mean, but it was the government that actually passed those laws, more so to raise the taxes, if you will.
Yeah, there's all sorts of reasons they would do that. CJ, I was curious what you think about that, and you too, Jungle. How should that be handled?
I personally think that there should be a complete and total shutdown of the border until the problem is fixed. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think we should be at a point now where unless you are a citizen or somebody with a green card, there's just no passage one way or the other. And then at that point, we can figure out, all right, how do we make sure we're keeping care of children? How do we make sure we're, controlling drugs and terrorists and criminals and things like that, keeping, coming in, all that kind of stuff. Because it doesn't seem to me like you can, I don't want to get this too political, but Trump did have an issue with the whole kids in cages thing, right? That was super popular, obviously. And the thing is he really had two options. You either put these people in cages, or you let them continuously cross the border. But as of right now, you're in a catch-22 where there doesn't really seem to be a solution almost. Like everything is just kind of terrible. And so my view there would be, okay, well then just shut the whole thing down and we'll figure it out when we don't have to worry about all these other periphery problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah, shutting the whole down is actually the whole.
Yeah,
Hey, Alex,
It's the whole problematic matter if you shut it down, because it comes to a grinding halt and you have all these things that are backed up or midstream that haven't been okayed, or, what do you do with that? Okay, you finish out the ones that are okayed, but you have these other ones that are backed up that aren't going to be done. We're not just talking, 100 cases. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of cases, and not just in California. It's also other states, New York, Florida, Texas, and all that. So it's such a dilemma, but there is no way out of it right now.
I think, I'm a little bit biased. I'm, from South America, and I know the South American people, and I feel for them, and I would want them to be able to, come to the United States. Although I do see the value of the law and having people come in the right way and qualify the right way. But this thing with the anchor baby is a little bit out of control. And people just, it used to be it was a serious crime to cross the border, to come in without a visa, without anything. Mm-hmm. And now they're just, now it's like, it's a good deed or something almost, for the sake of getting the vote or something. I don't know. It's just all turned on its head, It's like, here, I personally, am in favor of foreigners coming to America, especially if they're decent people. But then, and then there's a waiting list for like people from India. They got to have qualification, and from the Philippines, and there's a huge qualification threshold for them, and then other people just walk over the border. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, the problem reminds me of kind of the way the conversation went, where it's like easy to point to the hard situations, the moral dilemmas in a broken world, and then point to those and kind of like suggest that the moral principles or the moral commands don't apply because look at that doesn't answer these problems per se. And it's like, well, you got to look at it like their baseline principles or commands, you could say, or they are, and you got to reason out from there how they apply in a broken world. So it's not really negating the fact that they're encompass righteousness in their entirety. It's just that you can always find some dilemma that's going to be problematic for answering without there being some kind of issue.
Well, and that's the whole thing about living in a fallen world, right? Like I often make the statement, and it's a very total statement, and people often say, well, what about this and what about that and all these other things, but they're not really understanding my my point, right? And so I'll make the statement very frequently that killing is wrong. Like, and I mean it absolutely every single time, even like stepping on an anthill. I think that is morally wrong. And when people have an objection to that, I just ask them this simple question: will ants die in heaven? And the answer is obviously no, they won't, right? Ants and snakes and dogs and people and all of us won't die in heaven because killing is bad. It's a negative thing, right? And yet at the same time, we do live in a world where you can't avoid killing, right? Like you literally cannot avoid killing. You might be able to go vegetarian, and you might be able to keep yourself a pacifist, and you might be able to make sure you avoid fights and all this other kind of stuff, right? But eventually, maybe it's an accident. Maybe you just accidentally squish a bug. But at some point, you will kill something because we live in a fallen world, right? And chances are it's going to be more than squishing a bug. Chances are you might be in a situation where you need to kill an animal because you got to eat, or you need to kill an animal because it attacked you, or you need to kill somebody because they attacked you, or you're a soldier, or the death penalty, or whatever, right? But all of those are as a result of being in a fallen world, right? They're evil things that happen because we live in an evil world. And the thing about those kinds of laws, right? Laws like that, or like lying is another example, right? And the moral dilemmas that we can take from them is the moral dilemmas only work because we understand that these things are absolute, right? In other words, it's only a moral dilemma for me to lie to the Nazi or not lie to the Nazi because I know lying is wrong.
Exactly. That's a great point, man. That's it.
Exactly, right? Like it's and I agree with, when we come to the conclusion, the life of the Jew is more valuable than the truth being told to the Nazi. Agree, 100%. But the point still stands, right? It's not even a dilemma if it wasn't for the fact that that we know that lying is wrong, or that killing is wrong, or that dishonoring your parents is wrong, or whatever it happens to be, right? And so I would even say, and I'll shut up with this so that other people can comment. I would go as far as to say that moral dilemmas prove moral absolutism more than they go against it.
Oh yeah, it's like kind of how in the
opposite reaction.
Yeah, the problem of evil, in a technical sense, proves God in the sense that
you have to have a equal and opposite reaction to everything. So if you're proving a negative or whatever you're trying to do, there's always an opposite answer to it. There are absolutes, but somebody's going to come up with an answer for it. It's it's kind of that standard in philosophy, right? The arguments back and forth between philosophers on certain things. Generally, it's about morality, or it's about something to do with a human happening. So yeah, it's just there's always an argument to the other side, except when it comes to who God is, because there can only be one. And that's why they try to say, oh, there can't be a God, so we'll try everything to get away from somebody that can actually judge us. That's my thought anyway.
CJ, you said something really controversial there about ants not dying in heaven. Surely that's just naive and ridiculous. How can you possibly say that? And I'm being tongue in cheek because I agree with you, but I mean, this is what you hear from the old earth creationists, and I want to have a dialogue with them about this. But I think you're right. I mean, even if that's not true, which I tend to think ultimately it is, and we're so lost in our what we see in the world now, people just can't even conceive of such a thought. But to me, the line becomes too foggy there. Like, which animals get to die in the restored heaven, with the God of the living who gives life to animals and breath? Does he intend for them to be killed and screaming and being eaten alive, etc.? And like, where would you draw the line, saying, well, these aren't really alive, they just are born and die, die in a fallen world, are moving, living, breathing beings? It just seems like, I've asked this to a lot of like bigger, influencers and old earth creationists that have a lot of popularity, and they either laugh it off or don't think it's a problem. And I think it is, and it should be discussed.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And in fact, I even think, especially in regards to like the when it comes to animals, right? I think that's such a neglected area of philosophy. Animals and ethics, animals and the human condition, animals and suffering, all these things, right, are just things that people like C.S. Lewis is a perfect example. I love C.S. Lewis. He is my favorite Christian philosopher, bar none, and my favorite author, bar none. His response to animal suffering is one of the worst and least thought out things I've ever heard in my life. He says basically, well, and all loving God wouldn't create beings simply to suffer, therefore animals must not actually suffer. And it's like, that's just purely absurd. Like, you've obviously never owned a dog before, or a cow, or any animal at all, for that matter. I mean, a lizard.
Or hit a deer.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, they absolutely suffer. And of course, again, I love C.S. Lewis. I'm not dragging him down, but the point in bringing him up was just to say that, like Christian philosophy has dropped the ball when it comes to animals, in my opinion. And when you look at the scripture, I think what we find is that, you know, the God of the Bible is, you know, he's a lot like the vegetarian hippie cliche in a way. He's not literally, right? I'm not saying that. I don't mean to insult God in any way, but what I mean is to say that, you know, you look at how he references animal life, and it's constantly with adoration and love and care. Like, so for example, when you have the situation where he's discussing, you know, he tells the people, you know, are not 5 sparrows sold for a penny? And your heavenly Father knows the feather on each of their heads. And how much greater are you than the sparrows, right? And the point of that story is obviously how much greater are you than the sparrows. But what's the hidden implication in there? That God cares so much for each individual little bird that he actually has numbered each of their feathers individually, right? And that he knows each bird individually, like the one, and then the one's descendants, and then the, you know, so on and so forth. And like that's the kind of person that he is. Or in Isaiah, I think it's 6, where Isaiah prophesies about the lion and the ox lying together, and the lamb and the wolf lying together. In fact, that's the picture that I have in my background here as a painting that's sort of like based off of that verse, right? It's a wolf laying with a lamb. And I mean, just think of that in itself, right? The wolves, these vicious, at least according to the way the Bible portrays them, vicious, brutish creatures. They're nasty. They snarl. They do all this stuff that you even, you know, compare to wicked, sinful man. And yet God loves them enough that he's going to actually have a place for them in heaven. And you know what else he has a place for in heaven in that same Isaiah 6? Snakes. Now tell me any animal in the entire planet that is more hated in the Bible, or that is given more slack, I should say, in the Bible, or flack, I should say, right, in the Bible, than snakes. You obviously won't find one. You might get pigs, but I mean, the devil is literally called a serpent. You know what I mean? And yet God loves them to the point of where they'll be there in heaven. You know, Solomon talks about how the righteous is kind to his beast, but the cruel of or the righteousness of the wicked is cruel. And you know, there's the talk of how, you know, the rabbis talk about how animals, when you sacrifice, are not meant to needlessly suffer. And part of the reason you wring necks off of birds is because it's a very instant way to kill, and so on and so forth, right? And the point just being that, you know, you have this God who cares extremely. He cares, like, the most you've ever loved a person, God loves termites infinitely more than that. You know what I mean? And obviously he loves you more than he loves termites, I believe. But the point just being that, like, you know, it is very consistent throughout Scripture, God's adoration for his creation and how much he loves them and cares for them. You know what I mean?
Well, CJ, there was when you read the description of Leviathan and Behemoth, it's almost like, you know, God is like really proud of his creation, you know, in the, you know, this is the first of the ways of God, and this is the, you know, the fearsome beast that you'll never forget. So if you ever try to mess with them, you know, it's like, you know, even the dinosaurs God cared for. That's true.
Yeah, what about Romans 1, where it says his attributes are clearly seen by the things that are made? Now, I can't help but to ask if, you know, that's my big thing with evolution, why I see it is just absolutely problematic, is if we're supposed to see God's, you know, that's biology in the worldly sense, right? You know, that's what they say, the people that are advocating for it, the Christians even, and it's like, and they talk about how beautiful it is in its own weird way or whatever. And it's like saying, oh yeah, it's it makes no sense to me. Like, what are we supposed to learn from that? I just don't see us walking through the new earth with Jesus, and then a guy pops out of the woods and blows the head off of a grizzly bear. You know, it's like, really? Like, how is that? How is that working? What attribute are we seeing in these creatures that are flesh-eating viruses, or or parasites that kill kill creatures, and they suffer as they slowly die? I mean, give me a break. That's surely part of the fall. I mean, there's nothing beautiful about it. There seems to me that there's some kind of argument you can make similar to like the greatest possible being argument that says, well, if animals are going to have to suffer because that's their design, then I can conceive of a greater God that's more loving, and so God wouldn't be God.
Yeah, and especially, anyone who's had a pet they really cared for die, right? Or be in serious pain even, right? Anybody who's seen that, I think, would very, very plainly come to the conclusion that's wrong and that there's something immoral about that, right? Now, obviously, moral intuition does not automatically mean that it's a good thing. But the point I bring up in even saying that is, if we are made in the image of God, and that's something that is so just like heartbreaking for us, then it has to be infinitely more heartbreaking for him, and I even point out, say again.
Oh, no, I was gonna say I agree with you. Like, oh man, like I'm a softie for animals, so I cried when my lizard died, and that was like a few years ago.
Right.
Imagine the devastation when I was raising hamsters at 9 years old, and Grace, the mother hamster, ate her babies.
Right. Yeah.
That happens. But hey, I got to give a shout out to Reverend Gary Crawford. I meant to mention you earlier. How's it hanging, guy? Glad you were there for my 3-on-1. It turned into a 5-on-1 later. It was crazy. All right. So just had to give that shout out.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I think that's kind of interesting about the whole thing too, when it comes to animal life, right? It is just sort of the idea that there is almost a teaching in allowing us to have lesser creatures on the planet, right? Because don't get me wrong, it's not the same thing, but I have very often reflected on the fact that my dog probably looks at me in a way similar to the way I look at God, not literally the same way. In fact, I even think that I think it might be possible that animals are even aware of a creator in some sense, although I don't know about that. That's sort of my own speculation, right? That's even my tinfoil hat speculation, I'll be honest. But nonetheless, this dog, like, he adores me. He understands that I am very greatly powerful compared to him. He sees me as his source for sustenance. He sees me as his source for morality. If he's scared, then he wants to be around me, or of course, potentially my wife. But the point just kind of being, right, that's a kind of cool thing there, because it's in a way giving you a little bit of a sneak peek into God's care for lesser creatures who also look to him for sustenance, who also look to him for their morality, who also hide themselves behind him, who also adore him. And it's interesting, I think.
Amen. Yeah, it's like an object lesson in some sense. And can we just poo-poo that away as a naive emotion? I mean, I admit that I'm sure I'm overly emotional about the idea. I admit that, but I think you can't deny that there's some kind of sliding scale that matches up to the care God has for us and the way we are supposed to, depend on God. And surely if the creation is any kind of thing that's presented to us so that we're without excuse, surely God didn't intend for animals to suffer, and for, it's a sliding scale at the least, as far as application and attention, etc.
Well, yeah, and to kind of, to put a nice little bow on the point I was just making about how, it sort of gives us a sneak peek into God, right? Well, we wouldn't think of God as very just if he looked upon us, the lesser creatures, and thought that we should be beaten and tortured and all this other kind of stuff, right? So in the self same way, I think that God does expect us to treat the animals with a level of dignity and respect. And again, I think that he is himself even, very fond of them. And I think scripture is pretty clear on that. And it is weird. I'll be honest. The reason I even stress it at all is because there's like this idea around a lot of fundamentalists and evangelical Christians that animals are like almost automatons, right? Like they barely even exist outside of what you need to use them for. You know what I mean? And it's like, you didn't get that from scripture. You got that from your own imagination.
Yeah, I get that we have to I advocate that we have to use animals for food products and stuff like that. And I mean, I think we don't have to do it like we're doing it, but I'm realistic about that. And I'm not, but often when you talk like this, you get pegged as like some sort of, soy boy or whatever, or naively emotional or something. And I think that's not dealing with the issue properly. I mean, I understand that we have to use animals in certain ways, et cetera. And that's the state we're in. And I eat meat. I'd like to not eat meat, but I do. And I'm aware of that being inconsistent with my thinking on it. But the point is it just doesn't seem to make sense to me to deny that there's something there.
Well, one thing I will say, because I hear you on the, like people will just look at you as naive or a peacenik or something like that. And, I've developed somewhat of a reputation now as fiercely fundamentalist. And I appreciate that, because when I say things like I'm about to say, it lets people know that I am coming from a fundamentalist perspective and I'm not doing this peacenik thing, right? But there's no dispute in the Bible as far as certain things, right? Not only is God an animal lover, he's also a pacifist, right? He's not real big on warfare. People look at they think, whoa, well, what about Joshua? What about the Amalekites? What about the Midianites? What about? And it's like, okay, go read every single one of those stories. And the enemy is an aggressor or is being actively judged every single time without exception. And you look at these things, these sound like quote unquote liberal things, but it's not. God is a pacifist. God is an animal lover. God loves immigrants, right? That doesn't mean that our modern left is doing those things correctly, right? In fact, I would say the exact opposite. I think they make life harder for immigrants, and they make life harder for animals, and they, and all that other kind of stuff. But the point being that, there is a danger in, oh, that's just liberalism. Because it's like, well, no, it's actually scriptural. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that, because I was really anybody that was on the Praise I Am channel and all that with Bill Tavis. I asked him, hey, have you read the Bible? He says no. And I'm a new Christian is what he said, and things like that. And he's already proclaiming, he's a theistic evolutionist, but he's already proclaiming that he already knows. He doesn't need to read those because he already knows. And look, there was a time, okay, I've read all through the Bible twice, okay, but there's certain things that you just don't remember. So you got to go back and look them up. Say, oh, okay, it's kind of like a Mandela effect. Did this really happen? Did that really happen? I'm getting confused. But you go back to it and you read about some of the places that Joshua went, and they really pick on not only Jericho, but they pick on the other one where the Amorites were at. And, they didn't read it. They didn't see the justification. They don't read it in context. And you can tell by the way that they're arguing, or they're just lying about it, trying to make their own little worldview fit into it. I think it's a both type of a thing, where they have basically a like a the ability to have not read, or they did a synopsis of it. I got into the thing about, Westcott and Hort, what they did, and, to the Greek, where they falsified a bunch of the transcripts and things like that, because they were part of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was trying to get a hold back onto their basic Bible, that has the Septuagint, things like that they're taking it off of. And so you get all these different types of translations where it doesn't fit in, but they search for those types of scriptures. And that's kind of the poison that's really got into Christianity today. I'm not saying you just have one Bible. I'm more so King James, but I'm okay with the New King James. I'm okay with a couple other translations, but I always just use the King James. It's just easier for me to read, actually.
Mhm.
But the fact is that they'll go off on some tangent, read like the Living Bible, or they just came out with that new Bible. I can't remember the name of it, but it's in like jargon and stuff like that. Does anybody hear about that? It was maybe a year or two ago they came out with this Bible, and it is just nonsense. I mean, utter nonsense.
Oh, are you talking about the Message?
No, maybe it's some other. Maybe that's it, but I thought it was another name. Kind of like the Word or something like that. Maybe it is the Message, but it's like totally just nonsense. I mean, you can just take out any verse that you want that Paul wrote, and it's all going to be.
Sorry, Kelby just told us
The
Passion.
path. Yes, that the worst ever. I mean, it makes the Living Bible look like the King James version.
Yeah.
It's just like, so this is what we're dealing with, and I'm 52. I don't know the age of everybody. I know Jungle's a year younger than me, and everything's just like coming really quickly. And I saw it when my kids were going to school. My son graduated in 2007. So since then, I've seen this progression of falling away, if you will, but they're just not being taught, biblical scripture that you can fall back on. And there's a lot of false conversions out there. How can you have a conversion when there's nobody that's able to, when somebody cannot, quote to you what it says in, any of the book of John? They don't know John 1:1. They don't know, those easy ones, easily snipe. They don't know the Roman road, 3:23, 6:26. They just don't know. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it really hardens my heart. That's why I'm getting more involved on these chats, and that's why you see me a lot more, because I'm thinking of doing a little bit of a different thing that I've done in my life, and so it's a life change, because I've seen just the tear down. Not only just what your whole debate was are the Ten Commandments moral, and things like that. It breaks down into the family. It breaks down into schooling. It breaks down into kids getting together at school. What are they actually talking about? Things that, we used to talk about were probably cartoons and all that other stuff. And now they're talking about, just spooky stuff, that we weren't talking about. Yeah.
I'll give you some insight, because, and let me just say, I appreciate the fact that you're all over here on my channel as a bunch of 30 and 50-year-old men, because I am 22.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys a lot. In fact, because it blows my mind that I am treated in a equal fashion by you guys, because you are so much more experienced in life than I am. But I'll give you some insight into my generation, right? I do not know a single, and I'm not making this up, one single woman who was a virgin by the time she was 18, unless she did so for explicitly religious purposes.
Exactly.
Not one.
Nope. You're right.
It's the saddest thing ever. That's the saddest thing, man. So sad.
Remember a few years ago when they had that, what was it, the promise ring that girls were getting into and all that?
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of a front.
No
my son
kidding.
dated one of those girls. What a travesty. But it was not saying all. There were some that really were, saving themselves. But no, I mean it's not, saving yourself for the first time and things like that. Even my mom had premarital sex. It's just one of those things that has been done over ages and ages. Yet we're talking the amount, right? I think I mentioned I dated that single mother. The daughter, who when I met the mother was just turning 13. By the time she was 15, so 2 years on, she had a Snapchat channel, and I brought it up. I said, she's 15. Why is she having a Snapchat? Oh, they make goofy faces and all that other stuff. And I wasn't hacking anything at all. All right. I just decided to do some investigation. So I asked my daughter. At the time she goes, she's 15 and she's on Snapchat. That's not right. Like that. And I said, okay. But come to find out, the pictures and all the other stuff that were going back and forth, for a 15-year-old, all right, it was just like, wow, this is just insane. So I brought it up. That didn't go well with the mother. That relationship didn't last very long. But it's just kind of it's really interesting the way that it's just all flowing quickly. And like you said, didn't find one that hasn't had something by the age of 18, and and they get chastised for it now instead of the other way around. It used to be taboo, and now they get chastised for not having sex.
Well, yeah, I made this comment once because I have had the luxury of growing up in a very fundamentalist household, and I say luxury because I think that in the modern age that is a huge benefit, because so many things I just get to see clearly by default because of who my dad is. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with me, and one of the things I would point out a lot of times when I was in high school, because of course, now that I'm out of high school, I don't have nearly as many female acquaintances as I did, just being that we were in classrooms with each other that are co-ed, right? But the point is, one of the things that I would always sort of stress to them is like, so you guys use the word prude as an insult. Do you know what that word means? It's from the French word meaning honorable. You're calling each other honorable as an insult.
Right.
Calling good evil and evil good.
Exactly.
There it is.
Like it's insane, really. Like, could you imagine? I would just walk up to you. You know what, Alex? You're such a good dude. Excuse me, Alec. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
You're an excellent person. Trying to turn down, right?
Exactly. But that's literally what prude is. It's
Right.
You're calling somebody the French word for honorable person.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. What? Yeah, who's going to stand in the breach? I say CJ standing in the breach. So if you're out there and you're not supporting somebody, support CJ.
Well, I appreciate you, Jimmy. I appreciate you guys both, actually, quite a bit. And do remember that, glory does go to God, right? Because I have been born into a lot of luxury, right? As far as the things that I knew. And so, I obviously had no control over that. Just the same way that, Barron Trump has no control over being born rich. I had no control over being born in a knowledgeable household. So all glory goes to God.
Yeah. You can go on Patreon and have a monthly donation. You can give up a cup of coffee or two every month. What better could your money go towards than someone speaking truth in this time? It's an easy thing. I'm doing it. It's hardly any kind of sacrifice. So consider it if you're out there and you think he's doing the right thing here.
Well, I mean, just a piece of advice. You got to look at it as a coaching. So you got to treat everybody the same. That's when I coached my son's baseball team, thing like that. There was some ability difference.
Right.
There was some really talented kids and weren't, but we treated everybody the same. So this is t-ball. You guys ever play t-ball? Back in the day when you were like 5, 6.
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, so we had, and it was basically a team that we had, sons and daughters that were on the team and everything. But we had this, I think, 3 that came out of the league that we had to take, which is fine. And there was this girl. I swear to you, she was not taller than 2.5 feet tall. She was small as anything. That stand for the t-ball was taller than she was. And we're like, how are we going to work this in? Because we have to play every player. And I said to the head coach at the time, because I was just a base coach, And so I said to him, hey, something special is going to happen with this girl. That's why it was given to us. That's why she's here on this team. Something special going to happen. So lo and behold, we make it to the championship game. 2 counties, in East Tennessee, we make it to the championship game. It's a tie game, all right, going into the 6th inning, last inning, everything like that. Tie game, 2 outs, 2 men on, right? She gets up. I see the head coach head just go to his feet, right? His jaw's dropping. What are we going to do? And I said to him, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. So the other team had this kid who was the shortstop. And because he, more accurately at that age, getting it to first base, he would roll the ball. Okay. He was very accurate rolling the ball. He wouldn't throw the ball. He would roll the ball. So can't remember the girl's name right offhand. But anyway, she hit the ball right to that shortstop. The coach was just like, ugh. So we send the kids home from, second and third, hoping that the throw doesn't go to first base. Halfway through, that thing hit a rock and went left. And she won on that single. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? I mean, this is not, you can ask my son, you can ask my ex-wife, you can ask 100 people. This is exactly what happened. That kid was rolling people out at first base all game long. That girl came up, he started rolling. I even go, oh man, it's over like that. And then just as I said that, it hit the rock and went left. Just a little pebble. I mean, we're not talking like maybe the size of your pinky nail. That's all it took to throw that ball off to the left. Just amazing. So we ended up winning the championship. So certain things happen in life that you have to treat everything equal with, because you never know when that thing that you think is a liability may be your best strength. You just never know.
Yeah, no kidding. Actually, it's this is a sort of comedic, tongue-in-cheek example of that. That's not quite as well. You'll see what I mean. It's sort of an example of bad things working for good. So when I've actually been in the relationship I'm currently in since I was 15, and I'm going to be 23 here in 7 days. So, pretty.
Get off the pot or piss, man.
Oh, no, I'm already married.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we got married when I was 20. Actually,
it's good job.
Yeah, thank you. It's sort of a funny story in and of itself. It's a lot quicker, so I'll tell that one too. Basically, we moved out and moved into a home with each other, and somebody completely different from myself goes and asks the pastor at our church, the assistant pastor at our church. He says, "Hey, I'm living with a girl I'm not married to, and I feel really guilty about it." And the pastor has this conversation with this person, and and he starts to say, well, you guys, we're not going to kick you out of the church or anything, but you guys have got to rectify this. This person then comes to talk to me about his situation, and I ended up being so convicted that literally within 2 days we were married. He was like, all right, yeah, you know what? I don't want to be doing this. I'm not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere, and I'm not trying to insult her or insult God any longer. So literally went to the courtroom within 2 days.
That's awesome.
And thank you for that. But the story I was gonna sort of give though is just so the way that me and my wife actually started hanging out before we even started, dating or anything, I kid you not, is the most ridiculous thing in the world, especially considering where we're both at now, right? But I was on house arrest, fresh out of juvie. And since I wasn't able to leave, I couldn't go to the local ashtray and pick cigarettes out of that because I had a cigarette addiction. So I asked her, who lived across the street, hey, will you bring me a cigarette as a 15-year-old kid so that I can smoke it inside my house on house arrest? And that story is hilarious, in my opinion, because obviously I'm not a smoker anymore, right? And life has changed tremendously since that point. But the idea just being like everything about that situation is negative. Like if I was a parent and my son was telling that story, I'd be like, are you kidding me? I'm like grinding my teeth as you're telling the story. You know what I mean? Like,
Oops. I made a mistake with my. What was that?
Did he go on mute? What happened?
I
made a mistake with my.
Go ahead.
I made a mistake with my mtDNA. It's H3G, not HG3. It's letter then number then letter. But that's besides the point, I guess.
Yeah, and it's no, I had finished my my story there though, but it's just because it's just the short and quick of it. But it's just funny to me thinking back on a 15-year-old kid asking another 15-year-old kid if she can bring him a cigarette because he can't go get one himself because he's on house arrest. You know what I mean? Like, but all worked out for good, right?
Yep. I remember when the cops came one time and everybody was like all there and everything, and the guy that had the weed was like the funniest looking guy there. He walked right through the middle of everybody, walked away. It was like he was like a special kid and everything, but he knew exactly what he had to do. It was funny. He walked right through the middle of the crowd. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say the interesting thing about all of it kind of is too. There is obviously I'm not trying to say in any way, shape, or form that God endorses our sins. So please, don't hear me as saying that.
Never did.
He does use it. You know what I mean? He does seeming like, and there's a biblical example where he uses Jacob's lying in order to get Jacob not only safe, but also with the birthright. And of course, Jacob lied. That was a sin. It was an evil thing to do. And God obviously doesn't, isn't approving of that. And yet he used it in order to make sure that this child, Jacob, was doing exactly what it is that he wanted to do. And I find that to be interesting because I feel like I've somewhat lived that,
Yeah. Well, it's what we were talking about earlier about God's nature. I think there's even a verse that says God is not like us. He's very different from us, and we tend to think that God is like a person, like a human being, but he is quite different than us as far as his nature is concerned. And it's for us to learn, what his nature is like, and to learn from him.
Yeah, no kidding.
Are you talking about God's ways and not our ways?
Because like Jacob, deceived his father to get the blessing, but he had to get the blessing, and we don't understand that stuff. I mean, that's hard to understand, really, but that's what happened, regardless.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, his mom had a hand in that though.
Right,
Quick,
right. His
just
mom.
quick, go make the stew, and I'll knit you up a nice woolly outfit for you.
Yeah, yeah. Which means that Esau was very hairy too.
They said he was red haired. That's what the
Yeah, he was red haired and very hairy. He must have been like an animal or something.
Bigfoot. That's where Bigfoot came from.
Yeah.
Esau walking around.
Yeah, I love that too because I've been my very first group that I started doing apologetics against was Black Hebrew Israelites.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah, and I'll probably get back into that too because I've recently talked to G-Man about that. And G-Man thinks
you
that
jumped into the fire, brother. I mean, you jumped fully into the blazing furnace.
That is so much. I mean, it might have a strange sense of what's fun, but I think that's so enjoyable to have a discussion with people on the street like that. Be it Black Hebrew Israelite or whoever they are. To me, it's just, I don't know. I just enjoy having a conversation and, like matching wits, but, because God, it's not just your wits, because God gives you the words to say, and you're like there waiting for help from God, and God gives you exactly the words to say. It's amazing. It's great.
Yeah, and the kind of the thing that intrigued me about them, to be honest with you, was I always had a problem with, like, in fact, I remember as a kid, I had a big problem with Christians in general because I wasn't one yet, right? Because I thought they were really fake. And, one of the things that kind of turned me off about Christianity was just how fake it seemed like everybody was. And I was really attracted to, like, Black Hebrews and Muslims and things like that because they're just so serious about it. You know what I mean? Like, every little detail of their life is dictated by their faith. And it wasn't until I grew up that I kind of realized that, okay, well, I don't have to be part of a false religion in order to have dedication, right? I can just be dedicated to the right religion and other people. And I also, another part of that was just my dad himself and his church has always been very serious about the religion. So while I saw a lot of fakes, I always did have in the back of my mind the reals, right? So that was helpful too. But yeah, it attracted me to them, right? Because it was like I kind of want to know why you guys are so devout. What's the deal here, right? And then of course being a white person, right? And then once I'm there, I got some skin in the game because they like loathe me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And especially since I'm a white person.
But I wasn't afraid. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Go ahead.
I wasn't afraid to talk to them. Because I talked to people on the street in Chicago when I was there in like 82 to 83. And I talked to people even in Newark long before YouTube came along. I was talking to the Black Hebrew Israelites and Muslims and stuff in Newark where G-Man is. But I always wanted to set up a time to go over there on, where they gather with G-Man, meet up with G-Man over there, but I never could connect with him on that. But I used to go there, long before I, YouTube and talk to them because I just enjoy it, even in Chicago a long time ago.
Yeah, I feel that. And I do have one thing that I, want to sort of give credit to you on, which is that, I'm sure that Black Hebrews in Chicago are a whole different beast than the Black Hebrews that I've met. Because, I'm on the West Coast, right? So, in fact, right now I'm in Idaho.
Yeah, they're. I mean, as a matter of fact, they're unique wherever they are. They're different, and you have to kind of like figure out what it is they believe. I had a coworker at the airport. He retired as well, but he said that I would probably be shining his shoes in heaven. So that's what he thought. That's what he thought about me. Well,
Yeah,
that
it's
was.
kind of
I
like,
mean, at least I made it to heaven, right?
hey, he had a job already set up.
That's true, right? I
Yeah.
guess we have to be grateful.
Already have a job.
Because they believe everything is turned around.
Yeah.
They believe everything is turned around. Instead of being the servant, they're going to be the ones who are going to be served. So that's the way that works.
I mean, getting back to the debate, I just thought about something, CJ. The fact of the way that your demeanor was during that was so. It put you in a better stream of things because the conversation went very well. There wasn't any Aaron Ra outbursts or anything like that going on, or arguing with a typical breakdown or anything like that on authoritative this or authoritative that between either of you. But your demeanor throughout the whole thing, you set it up very well. It was just, there's a few questions that we just don't know. It's just, okay, if anything could be a hypothetical, but hypotheticals are just that. They're hypotheticals. Not saying that they can't happen, but it's thrown outside the average, let's say. So let's say a scenario that, you've got this situation, that situation where they commit break all 10 commandments at once, right? Because obviously the first one that's going to fall is number one. The Sabbath is probably still the one that's not going to be, but I'm just saying all 10 get fallen at once at that, scenario. And okay, well, the person, went mental or whatever it might have been. You just can't answer that stuff on hypotheticals. And you handled those very well.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll be honest. I don't know if you heard my beginning of this, but I actually, it's not that I felt that I did bad because I liked a lot of my arguments. It's just that I am a little bit sick, and there were certain points in the conversation that I felt myself getting really foggy, and I just hope it didn't actually make its way onto the actual screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it came across that way now, but hopefully you get better and you're not coming down with the vid, bro, because take your zinc. Let's do that. Take your zinc. Zinc and vitamin D.
Hey, Daniel, como é que tá?
What's up? I just popped in to say hi.
Hello.
What's up?
I watched some of that debate, CJ. It was pretty interesting. That guy's I watched you talk to him before. He's kind of unique, I guess.
Yeah,
That's a good way to put it.
It really is, because he's like, he believes a lot of the same things that the quote unquote new atheists do, right? Which is like the most, I don't know what the word I want to use is, because rabid sounds like an insult, but that is kind of what they seem like from our perspective, right? And yet he's a very respectful and genuine and honest man.
He seems like it, but some of the things, I don't know if he's being really honest. Like when you say it's wrong to kill, right? What you said was perfect to me. It just sounded perfectly reasonable. You know what I mean? We all intuitively know. We know it's written on our hearts. It's wrong to kill things. We just know that. And for him to say like, oh, well, and then you said, well, there's certain situations where, you might be, where it's justified to kill someone. Like, that's not an argument out of it. And I can't stand when people go to those extremes. Like we would say abortion. Well, what if the mother's about to die and she has 3 kids, and if she has this kid, like that's the extreme scenario that you don't base the norm on the extreme. So I don't know. That gets frustrating to me.
Yeah, the whole rape thing's a bungle anyway. I mean, you can include,
rape's not the baby's fault. I don't even think that's an argument.
Exactly, it's not an argument, but in case of a abuse inside the family type of a situation.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
mean
it's a tragedy, but still.
it's a tragedy, but it's going to happen, and you have to face the consequences one day or another, right? And that's why the final judgment is there, because people are skating away with certain things that they're allowed to do because whatever the community laws are, whatever the you know uh, the courts say, or whatever the mandate is that comes down on. Like they just changed the whole thing. The brush off of the selling of the baby parts by Planned Parenthood, making millions of dollars. Selling kidneys and livers, because you can grow livers, right? Like if you cut a piece of your liver off, you can put it in a petri dish and you can replace your liver later. It's and so they're selling these, and they were going after the immune system, okay, on these babies, the thymus and the noids and everything like that is what they were going after on these babies. They were selling them for high dollars because you can take those and use them as a serum and either eat it or you can inject it or whatever it may be. But those cells that are able to heal wounds and things like that is what
Like
they're
stem
using these
cells you're
for.
talking about?
Yeah, stem cells, straight on. That's what that was the big thing. Me being a type 1 diabetic, you have the JDRF, which is very, very militant because they wanted stem cells because that was what's going to cure it. Insulin dependent diabetics, type 1. That's what's going to cure it. And we need stem cell research. Well, where are you going to get the stem cell research, right? So enter in selling of baby parts. So you got your stem cells, you got your other parts, and this and that. And it still hasn't made a damn difference in a type 1 diabetic. You can inject them with as many stem cells as you want, and your body's going to either react to it or not. So it's
I
pretty much a yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I could be wrong, but I think there is a way to collect stem cells without murdering babies. I think there is a way. I could be wrong on this, but
Oh, there is, but what I'm saying is that they lied to the girl at first. Um, the Daldane tapes really put that out. They lied to the children, that are going in there. I call them children because most of them are under 18, and they made a mistake, and they're going in there. They're told by the physician or the representative, oh, it's only going to take yada yada yada. But then you hear the horror stories of them trying to find find the baby with because the baby's actually moving away from the probe. You can see it. There's video. You can't see them on YouTube anymore. They took them all down, but there are videos out there where they've done the ultrasound at the same time. They're trying to stick the baby, and the baby is moving away inside the womb from this object that's coming in. It freaking just changes your mind instantly. It's just like, well, not for everybody, I presume, because they think it's just a ball of tissue. But using that and then making profit off of that, where you're also getting profit from federal funds, which come from the taxpayers to run these clinics because they need women's health. Okay, well, women's health is great. Okay, if you've got some sort of a women's issue, maybe your cycle isn't perfect, or you've got some sort of a female thing. Females, it just happens, right? So maybe they're afraid to go to their local doctor because of a mistake or something like that, and they go there thinking that they're going to give them medical care, and then instead what they turn around to is, well, you need to think about a better choice of living your life versus having to raise the child. And they're fully federally funded by our tax dollars. Plus, they're making money on the backside from institutions and pharmaceutical companies and all sorts of places, in the millions and billions of, selling these baby parts to everybody. So it's become a numbers game to get more profit. It's not to help the woman, and they don't understand that. What I mean by that is the women going in because they want to solve the problem. They're relying on an authority to help them out in this problem. So, but then they're also, the authority is looking at dollar signs. Oh,
yeah.
There's another $450. Okay. And plus, off of whatever we can get, because it's only a it's only a 2-month-old child. Oh my God, that's an extra. Oh gosh, if we sell this and this and this, we can make $100,000 off that. That's
Oh
how
my,
it works.
that's
Yeah.
terrible. I mean, there is no good argument for abortion, pro murder. There is no good pro murder argument. So I haven't heard one.
None.
Yeah.
And when they use the mothers in well, there was just a lady who just gave birth to 9 babies. The in vitro thing,
Wow.
9 babies. I mean, what the, and they thought that she was only going to have 7.
Only 7.
Only 7. She popped out 9.
I
So
had one that was tough.
yeah, right.
7.
I saw my 2, and I said, thank God I'm a man.
9. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just saying, like feeding them, changing them, like that's like impossible. 9 babies. Oh my gosh.
yeah, they generally like that one lady. God, it was a while ago. What, probably 15 years ago, maybe now, where she had the 7 and she had all the promos from Pampers and Huggies and
Yeah.
all the
TV
because
show stuff like that.
you have to use the baby formula because you just can't lactate that much, things like that. It's just so they get all these endorsements um, because it's advertisement for those products, which helps out. But now you got to think college. Now you got to think, oh man, taking them to school, you're gonna have to get a huge minibus, like one of those big Mercedes things, the big top ones. Put some
Yeah,
seats
yeah.
in it. It's like got your whole baseball team already solved, right?
Hey CJ, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 23 in a week.
Okay, wow, you're young, huh?
Yes, sir.
That's
I am usually the youngest person in these rooms.
and you're married now? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah, I was married at 22. It worked out for 25 years.
Yeah, I got married at 30. It didn't work out. Put it that
Yeah,
way.
Dan,
Unfortunately.
it's a different world. I mean,
Yeah.
my parents, if my father hadn't have died in 2007, um, my parents would still be married. My mom still considers themselves married and all that. That so I'm they would have been married 53 years last August.
Yeah, I mean, my parents actually got divorced when I was young. So, I mean, it was something that I promised that. I mean, I tried. I tried to, keep my marriage together. Just it takes two. You know,
Yeah,
you can't.
it's I mean, were you? Let me ask you this: were you both Christians?
No, I was. I am.
See, that's my ex-wife. I knew going in, she was a Jehovah's Witness, but after going to church and things like that, she started waking up to, how her father acted because she had some real daddy issues and things like that. Her mom had passed away when she was, I think, 1.5 from a drunk driver, and then the father married 4 women, and none of
Wow.
those lasted. And so she had some issues, with daddy issues. And so,
Are they allowed to get married at the same time, like to 4 women, or was it like one after another
oh
after
no,
another?
no, no, it was one after the other. It was
Okay.
one after the other, and he was one of the 144,000. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, so he had special privileges, I guess. But the thing is that I tried to make it work, but as you get older and more stress, kids were older, college, this tuition, that, and everything going on. She bailed.
Well, if
There's another thing I won't mention that really tore at my heart, but something that she did. But I tried to make it work. I mean, forgave her.
yeah,
It was just it was a travesty,
yeah,
and
that's hard.
so it just came to the point. I went out on a sales call on a Saturday, and she had spent the night at a friend's house or something like that the night before. And so I said, hey, you do what you want to do. If you're not going to tell me where you're at, and I'm sending you texts and you're saying
Oh, it's
nothing
terrible.
back.
That's terrible.
And so I said, I have to go. I'll probably be back at 4. And then when I came back, she had taken everything. So she had somebody in the wait with a truck or something like that to take all of her stuff because her car
Wow.
couldn't fit it all in. And
That's terrible.
so anyway, it was devastating,
Yeah.
And then how do you react to that? And it wasn't our first split up, while our marriage was, but she had a different feeling of how things should be. And I said, look, I'm still only 40. Okay. And, we can get this thing going and everything like that because we have tons of time in our life. And then she just went her own way. So, in saying that, wrapping up with it's basically unequally yoked. I still had to deal, and she's kind of gone back into the Jehovah's Witness thing.
Did she?
Yeah.
Huh.
And so it's being unequally. She's got kind of like a pseudo Seventh-day Adventist Jehovah's Witness Christianity thing going on that they all fit together in some way. Anyway,
What?
yeah, I know. She's taking the one from the other. So I'm just like, okay. I tried to make it work. If I do get together with anybody else, later, they have to be. I'll probably have to meet them at church. Somebody that's a believer, somebody that knows, the ropes as far as being a Christian, and not saying the submission side because both have to submit to each other because each has their own dealings with a household or a family or a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how it's going to have to be with me. I've just come to that conclusion that I'm not going to. It's not because I'm lazy or anything like that. Go out and change somebody to Christianity. Oh, now we can get married. It's just I'd rather find somebody who's a mature Christian. Don't have to be on the same level of. They could just be a Christian in 2 years or whatever it may be that they've come to, or they could be a mature Christian. Doesn't matter. It just feels like it would be a better scenario than being unequally yoked.
Well,
That's
someone
fine.
who at least puts Christ as number one in their life, at least, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
That's my
I mean,
story.
I hear you. I hear you. I mean, I was alone for 2 years. I didn't go out. I didn't do anything. I felt like I was just like I couldn't even imagine going out to meet women and stuff. It just seemed like I pretty much thought I'd just be alone.
Well, I'm
And
telling you, it's awkward, right? It's awkward.
yeah, I mean, I prayed about it. I had other people pray for me about it, and I actually did meet someone. So you never know.
Oh, fantastic! It's how it happens. It's just that glance, right? It's all it takes.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. So you never know.
Yeah. How does evolution do that one? Right? See somebody across the room and you go, "Hey, I'd like to meet that person." Right?
It must be my gray hair. I evolved gray
100%, man. If you got a little bit of gray, they're all over it.
But that's great,
awesome.
CJ. It really is. It's really great. I'm happy for you.
I appreciate that a lot, actually.
Yeah,
and
is she? She's Christian, obviously.
well, actually, unfortunately, we do live in
Uh-oh.
an age now where that's not something that can be expected. So, I am. I'm working on that. It's working quite well. Praise the Lord. But it's a process for sure.
I'll pray for you because, like I said, I mean, my marriage, it was good for a long time. I have a daughter, and it's just over time. I'm looking to God, and she's looking to make her, the bar. So, yeah, just be careful. And like you said, you're working on it. Hopefully she'll turn to Christ. That's all.
Sorry about that. I hit the back button on my phone. It slipped out of my hand.
All good, all good.
But I was
Yeah,
married
no,
in the church. I was married to church. You know, like she told me that she would kind of she would start going to church and stuff like that, but it just never really happened. So, and part of that's my fault. I was supposed to be the head of the household, kind of spiritual leader in the house, but life gets complicated and it goes by fast.
yeah,
So.
and one of the things that are sort of a part of my own personal walk in the whole thing is just the fact that I didn't really have my born again moment until I was 16, and even then it took quite a while for me to just to shake being like a worldly Christian. You know what I mean?
Or
Probably 2018. Honestly, I know that's pretty recent, right? That's not too long ago.
CJ, that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. 18 years old, I was way into the world. Believe me, you're in a far better place than I was. Put it that way.
Well, and you got the beauty of Idaho.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I had no kidding there. This place is like the greatest state in the world. And let me tell you what, too. Not only is it beautiful, but let me just, not that this is a political channel, but there's none of them dirty liberals. You know what I mean?
Are you in the Boise area? Are you outside Boise or?
Yeah, I'm in the Boise area, which ironically enough, considering my last comment, is the most liberal area of the state. But
I hear they have in Boise one of the best sushi places in the United States. I can't confirm or deny it, but I've heard.
it is. Let me tell you, there is. I don't know necessarily about that, just because I'm not real big on sushi myself. But there is an awful lot of just really, really cool things in this area, right? Like the rivers themselves, and the forests around and the mountains that we have here. And the thing is, some of these rivers too, like the Snake River, for example, right? I mean, that thing is huge. It is so big. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Evel Knievel tried to jump over that thing back in the day.
How'd that work out?
Didn't.
Oh, wow. Word.
Yeah, he's actually in some sort of a rocket ship type thing on that one. He didn't use his bike and didn't quite make it. Gorgeous. Didn't quite make it.
Was that a moment, or did he live past it?
Oh, he lived through it, and then I can't remember. Something got a hold of him, just died of old age. But he just shorted on the amount of fuel, I guess, that was going to get him across, and he didn't hit like the side of the gorge or anything. He just kind of dropped, and the parachute went. So it was a safe landing, but still came with a thud, and he broke some bones.
I'll tell you, back in the day, the stunts were like we have a lot better technology nowadays,
Yeah,
to calculate things. And I mean, people were pretty crazy back then.
Yeah, and you know what, too? It always blows my mind when I see people like that. And not even just that, but like LeBron James, too, right? Because I really like history and myth. And so when I read about these guys like Hercules and stuff like that, and then I see people who are willing to do stuff like Evel Knievel, or people who are capable of doing stuff like LeBron James, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's no reason this story is unreasonable to me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I agree with that.
Well, have you seen any of these? You go into a place like my, I get my car repaired at a certain place, and he's always got like the strongman channel on, where they're lifting those 250-pound boulders and pulling buses and stuff like that.
Pulling trucks with their teeth. Yeah.
Right. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, humans are amazing. Like, as animals, we are amazing as creatures. Like, and
Right.
I do take the position that we are like genetically mutated, like degraded from our original form. So can you imagine like what Adam was like, or like the original, the patriarchs? Less disease, longer lives.
Well, that brings us into another rabbit hole. JJ, you still there? Anyway, he could get into it. The 14-foot skeletons.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
I was on the chat.
Okay, yeah, the 14-foot skeletons
what's
and all that they found in the Americas. And the Smithsonian came and took them all, and they're somewhere in file 13 in the Smithsonian. But
yeah, I mean, whoever doesn't believe that there was giants found in America
with red hair, right?
Abraham Lincoln gave a speech and included in the speech about giants looking at Niagara Falls.
Yes.
So it was well documented they were pulling out giant skeletons out of the ground all over the place.
Yeah, and when was that, JJ? Was that in the mid 70s, early 80s? They were finding all these things, and then you didn't hear about them ever again. Am I wrong on the dates?
Yeah,
I mean, it's been for a long time.
I don't remember when it was. No.
Yeah, because then after that, you didn't hear about them. So yeah, giants of the earth. I mean, right here, they find them in Europe. They find them in Africa. They find them in the North Americas. Not so much in South America, but they find the elongated heads, the kind of alien-looking people.
Those are
and then they strong armed that poor guy with the Inca stones. That had men riding on dinosaurs and all sorts of stuff, and they made him say that he etched them when they weren't etched with an etcher; they were etched with something else. There's just so many rabbit holes we could go down.
I noticed there's a trend. Every time they find something that proves something, they'll make a fake one, and they say, "Look, it's fake," and then they'll say, "Oh yeah, it was confirmed to be fake," so they're all fake.
Yeah, I like that.
They tend to do that all the time. Whether it's a footprint or a carving or something, they'll make a fake one. They'll say, "Oh yeah, they're all fake."
Yeah, right.
They tend to do that.
I like that Ashley phosphate bed. That's good evidence. We have all the fossils mixed together in one layer.
Yes. And
that's the best. Like, that's exactly what they asked for. Like, you won't find a human with a dinosaur. No, they do. Actually, they did.
Yeah, and they won't allow anybody in there. It's cornered off now. I went down there.
That. I think it's blocked by mining. Like it's quarried. I don't know if you might be able to.
But you can't. They
don't speak.
You can't just be a lay person and get in there. It's one of those things that, not like Area 51 or anything like that, but it's pretty much hard to get to in the first place. But in the second place, it's they don't allow people to get it, but it is. They have everything you need to know there. You got clamshells with humans, with dinosaur bones, with saber-toothed tiger bones, or whatever else they got in there.
With deer, turtles, dogs, sharks, everything.
Right. Yep.
Basically, every kind of creature. My thing is I bring it when I used to sit there and waste time arguing in chat sections with evolutionists. I mean, I stopped doing it because it's just a waste of time. To be honest with you, you don't get anywhere with them. So it's just kind of like they just want to waste your time. But I used to sit there and go back and forth with them in the comment section. And whenever you bring up the Ashley phosphate beds, they either flat out deny it, like it's not real or something, or their excuse is that it was it's basically like the layers somehow washed out, and everything was embedded in the side of a river.
Right, it's the wiki answer.
That's their excuse. That's their excuse. Because, or from the quarries or something.
Yeah, I tried to edit some things on wiki on it, and they won't allow it.
Oh no!
That was the whole thing, that you're allowed to edit and things like that, but they don't allow it. It's so it's basically a short little blurb and yada yada, and denies it, and then move on. So
now, if you Google it, you could find the book. The guy that wrote the book about it, that archaeologist. You could find it also takes you to creationist websites. It will take you to CMI or Answers in Genesis, stuff like that.
Right, on their
Which,
websites. That's the problem there, because of the way that they've been so badmouth. Oh, CMI did this and CMI did that, and Answers in
yeah, they just
Genesis.
denial. Like, I don't even
I
use
mean,
them as like a source. I don't even bother.
yeah,
I'll
they
I'll
debunk
take
it.
their information though, but I mean, I won't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing of, oh, they're not scientists. Well, here's the reason why. They're
They are.
creationists, so they're not going to be hired by, Harvard or Berkeley or
Well,
Texas.
yeah,
They
but
aren't
some of
going to be
them
hired by them.
graduated from Harvard and stuff like that.
Right,
So
100%. They did graduate, yes. And then it's same story as I got. Oh,
yeah,
you
well,
can't work anywhere. I'm like,
I,
oh, okay. Well, I'll use
a
my
part of
MBA
me
then.
like a part of me. The reason like I first started arguing about with atheists about evolution is because it was like the number one response. You ask them why they don't believe in God, and they go to like evolution for some reason. Like that's their reasoning. Like it's science, science, science. That's why they don't believe in God. It's like, how does that? I don't understand how it follows. It doesn't follow. Even if evolution was true, which I don't think it is at all, it doesn't follow that there's no God. Now, personally, I think it's a problem with Scripture, definitely. So you can make an argument against Christianity, against the Bible, because I think it
Right.
contradicts Scripture. But to an
Yeah.
atheist, just saying there is no God, I don't see the reasoning in that at all.
See, and my thing with it has always kind of been that, like, some of the things that we not only is it assumed, but that you're like insane for questioning, are so simplistic. Like, for example, dinosaurs living with man, right? I'd love to have a debate with somebody on that if I wasn't convinced that it would take all of 3 sentences because they don't have any answer for my question. Okay, what are all these dragons? What are they? Why are they all giant reptilian creatures on in every single culture? Just like we dig up these giant reptilian creatures in every single continent. What are they? And it's always, in fact, I've heard, I'll just go through the examples of things I've heard. I've gone from Leo Filius, who's an internet atheist here, has his own Atheist Apologetics channel. He said that that's absurd and that it's not possible. And when I asked him why it wasn't possible, he said, because we know dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. It's like, that's not an answer. You're just circularly reasoning, right? I'm saying we have evidence they didn't die out 65 million years ago. You're saying that's not possible because they died out 65 million years ago. That doesn't make any sense. I asked the Raging Atheist about it. His response was just simply that we know what we know, and it's really just the same thing as Leo Filius's answer. I didn't personally ask him because he was dead, but Carl Sagan's got the most entertaining answer, in my opinion. Apparently, we have a memory passed down from back when we were mammalian creatures living in the dinosaur age.
Yeah, that is
right.
Which is
yes, Lamarckism.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like, that is the most insane babble I have ever heard. Carl Sagan is like a god to these people. You know what I mean? And that was his answer. And it's like, it's
a reptilian brain. Like, that is a dumb answer. It's crazy.
Right? Like, what kind of and by the way, if that is the answer, okay, well, I guess we all evolved. We were all amphibians at one point. So where's all the giant amphibious creatures in our mythology?
You know how many times as a swimmer I would have loved to have had gills?
Well, how about this? This is the response I get all the time. Humans aren't found in the same layer as dinosaurs. And I always bring up to them, I'm like, do you know you could go to Montana and find dinosaur bones sticking out of the ground? And now, last I checked, humans live on the surface. And if they find dinosaur bones on the surface, I'm pretty sure that's the same layer. I mean, come on. Like, you don't have to dig. You don't have to dig. 1,000 feet down to find dinosaur fossils. You could find them on the surface.
No, they've got that whole museum set up that's just like one big wall of just bones sticking out.
I'm saying, you find them on the ground. You don't have to dig. You could find
Yeah.
them underground. I mean, they're half
It's an
buried.
excuse they make because yeah, they were buried all by the same flood in the same event, and one layer on top of the other, over a mile deep. It's just an excuse they make that humans aren't found with dinosaur
They
bones,
act like the
which
geological column.
we wouldn't know even if it was true. Probably wouldn't know if it happened. It's probably in some drawer somewhere, right?
Well, they act like the geological column is like wherever you walk, like you could dig down and hit each layer. That's like you find in the books, the Jurassic, all the layers, right? They act like that's how it really is, but that's not how it is. Like, if you go out into Montana, like the so-called Jurassic period, you're walking on it. If you
Right.
go out somewhere else, it's not like uniform like they show in the books. It's not like that at all.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
different-
they made the whole Australopithecus thing off 4 bones, and a hip bone, some feet bones that they found 5 miles away. It cost, I forget how much the grant money was. The I can't remember the guy's name that was on the grant, but the grant was actually up 24 hours from his find. And so he sends in this paperwork that says we found this so that he can get more grant money. And he got the more grant money, and so that started a big dig. And I forget how many square. It was a big area that they find these little fragments of bones that can fit in a shoebox, and they say, "Oh, this is the skull, and this is what it looked like." And then bring in the artist rendering of it and the CGI, and let's put some human feet on it. Oh, by the way, let's make it have white eyes instead of brown eyes. Like the whites of the eyes.
Yeah, and by the way, they had a divergent toe, like a monkey. Anyway, so
Yeah,
Right.
they do that with dogs too to make them look really weird because you see the whites of their eyes.
yeah, I mean, they should just admit that the evidence is sketchy at best. It's like really sketchy. Instead of pretending it's like this amazing, it's like the best supported theory in science and all this propaganda.
No, but they were desperate. They were desperate because they had to explain the Laetoli footprints, and the kids were walking in the parents' footprints, and they had to explain it because it was an intelligent bipedal creature with kids walking in their parents' footprints. So they had to do something really quick.
No, they made two. They made two holding hands walking down like they were walking like they were a couple holding hands walking together. The Laetoli tracks, but they look just like human tracks. But they couldn't be human because humans didn't exist yet. Duh.
Yeah, and the thing, it's funny, you brought up dogs. I've always personally thought that dogs are a surefire, indisputable mountain passable for evolutionists, because let's just assume that the young Earth is wrong and that their dates are wrong, or are right, rather, just for a minute, right? So we domesticated dogs 30,000 years ago, and we sped up the process of evolution, which is why we have Chihuahuas and stuff like that now. And over 30,000 years, not only do we still have dogs, but barring mechanical issues, Chihuahuas can still mate with wolves and bring forth viable offspring.
Yeah. What's the best part of that, though, is that the wolf is still the most genetically superior out of all of our mixing of the genetics, like forcing evolution. The wolf is the most genetically superior creature, the untouched one.
Right. 100%, right? And so there you go. You have two different evidences for creation right there. The first one being that in a 30,000 year period that's amplified to something like 10 or 20 times, so it's more like a 300 to 600,000 year period as far as, what the effect that we're doing to the dog is, according to them, right? No changes, at least no changes that cause any sort of a differentiation in species. And on top of that, the original one is still, excuse the pun, top dog.
No dispute there.
And it's funny too, because it's interesting. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Bill Tavis, actually. was debating, I think, Standing for Truth like a week ago. And
The dumpster fire.
yeah, and he, and also this guy who he was just recently debating 2 days ago made this claim also, that Neanderthals and humans are different species, right?
What? Oh
And
my
yeah,
God.
exactly, right. It just cracks me up. It's like, dude, we mated. Like by definition, we're the same species. Like,
Exactly.
that's where that ends.
Exactly. That is the
Well,
definition of a species.
right.
I mean, the definition of species isn't clear. Just like a kind isn't exactly easy to define. Like, what's a kind? Well, animals that could reproduce, right? That does fit the definition of species. But there's, you could just say, well, if I'm infertile, am I not the same species anymore? You could say dumb things like that. You know.
All the different species of parrots can all reproduce. All of them, even the cockatoo and the the little. It's a smaller kind of a greenish, has a red crest on it. Parrot, they can all reproduce.
Yeah, I mean, species is a it's a vague kind of term. Like I don't deny that speciation could kind of occur. Like why not? Like you could call a chihuahua a different species than a wolf if you want, I guess. It's kind of arbitrary, you know? Because would a
Yeah,
chihuahua
but
reproduce with a wolf? No.
that's not even comparable to evolution, though. I mean,
It's
they
not.
keep trying to say evolution has changed. They want to redefine what evolution claims, right? When evolution is supposed to change one thing into another thing,
Yeah.
and change is not going to do it if you
Yeah. I
change
mean,
one
universal
animal.
common descent is my gripe. You know, they could redefine evolution how they want. I just have an issue with universal common ancestry. The idea that a single-celled organism somehow reproduced over millions and however many millions, billions of years into all the varieties of life we find today. That's the gripe I have. I just don't see that being possible. It's not genetically possible.
Right, the information's not there to be everything.
Yeah, unless the first
And if that
organism,
was the case, then it would
as I say, unless the first
it would
organism had
it would be
all the
top
genetic
down
information
anyways.
for all the species, for all the creatures,
Right,
then that's the only way,
right.
which they don't
And
believe.
that's even more of a designer. That's more design than
Mm-hmm.
than before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real quick,
Then
I
they
want to address in the chat. Slam asks, Neanderthals or Homo sapien sapien? That depends on who you ask, Slam. If you ask a modern day biologist, they will tell you no. They'll say no, it's Homo neanderthalis. The thing is, though, especially if you're European, of European descent, you probably have Neanderthal DNA. Meaning that the modern biologist is just wrong. They have to be Homo sapien sapien, otherwise we couldn't
Yeah.
mate with them.
Well, here's the thing: is that they really can't identify the Y chromosome of the Neanderthal, but it's probably a Japethite, and Europeans do have the RY chromosome, so they're Japhethites relatives, and the Asians even more so because they're not only Japhethite, but they also have the original genomic mix of the Japhethite, which is a direct relative to, or a closer relative to, the Neanderthal and the Denisovans, and they're related. They intermarry anyway.
Yeah. They wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare say like Africans or black people are different species than white people. They came up with the term race instead of species, right? But if it wasn't humans, yeah, they would take all the different all the different cultures of humanity and label them as different races. Of course they would. Different species. Of course they would. But they're all just human beings.
Right. So they were probably, I'm thinking they were probably Thracians or Javans, or the descendants of Javan or Tiraz, which is the Thracians, and they just went extinct. And they went extinct so early on that their Y chromosome is not either it's not identifiable to anyone, or they don't want to say who it's associated with.
I mean, Darwin was a racist, total racist. I mean,
Well,
he looked
if you
at
think
like,
about it, though, you'd have to be, though, right? Like, it's
Well, his cousin, Sir Francis Galton, was a eugenist, and Darwin
Yeah, but-
married his cousin, and 3 of his kids were disformed and all this other stuff. So they were trying it through their own families, or he just couldn't find a wife. I don't know. But Sir Francis Galton was one of the early eugenists that was trying to actually manipulate and to do all
Yeah.
these things. And
That's
so
eugenics.
actually, yeah, in order to be a sir, to be knighted as a sir, you have to be part of the royal family. So that's why that story, Knight's Tale, right? They had to make up that he was part of, I guess it was Prince Philip at the time. You saw the movie, right? Heath Ledger and all that stuff, where
No.
you can't be a knight unless you are a sir, and you can't be a sir unless you're part of the royal family. And this goes way back. I've had arguments with people about that all the time. But so
they're all inbred, right? The royal family.
yes, and so when you have Elton John becoming a sir, and I always ask the question, why wasn't God, what's his real name? James Picard for Star Trek. That guy, why wasn't he ever knighted as sir? And all that other stuff. Patrick, whatever his name is. But anyway,
Well, I mean,
yeah, they're all inbreds.
if I follow my family name back to its source in Scotland, it goes back to a Sir Robert or Sir Lord Robert of such and such a place, and we're in.
JJ, do we have to call you Lord JJ now? Sir Lord
well,
JJ?
actually, it's funny. I don't know if
Lord
I don't know if
JJ.
me and Alex share the exact same clan, but we do share the same last name. And at least for my end, the clan, they were called Coxon at the time because they were in Scotland.
Right.
Was actually one of the larger pro-Scottish independence clans, and then eventually one of the larger pro-unified monarchy clans, which I guess would probably be interesting if I lived in Scotland. There might be people who had something to say about that.
Right. Well, we got it from the Cock of the Walk, right?
Uh-huh.
That's where it came from. We were badasses, apparently. I have no idea. All I know is my grandfather at age 78 got in a fight with he was in the Navy, and Navy military, so there was this young Marine, was probably 35, and my grandfather's 78, and my dad gets a call in the middle of the night, and I'm younger, and my dad gets a call, hey, you gotta go pick up your dad. So I'm there, and my grandfather curbed this guy. At 78, curbed this 35-something-year-old. And it was just like, that's grandpa strength, bro.
That's great. That's funny. Hey, Danny.
Just a bunch of savages, that's all.
Yes.
Back before. Actually, Josephus was a tin trader. He apparently got his wealth to bury Jesus from his tin trade in
So my mic
in
is
Britain.
working?
You were talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
What's that, Dan?
Yeah, it's working
Okay,
good.
my
yeah.
mic wasn't working, I guess. Okay, sorry.
It's working now.
Well,
Yeah,
come
it's
on
working
in.
now.
You're good, Danny.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Jungle. I was just making sure my mic. Someone said hey, and I wanted to say hey back.
So Danny, what's your ancestry? Is it go back to the same place?
I don't know. I don't
More or
know anything
less?
about that stuff. I mean,
You don't.
I
your
just
family.
Okay.
like you're talking. I thought you were talking about like because last time I was listening, y'all were talking about like evolution and stuff. My family, like that I know of, like my, like I thought you were talking evolutionary family or something like that. Let's see, Kentucky. So Cumberland Gap. That's my dad's side, and that's as far as I know. maybe that goes all the way back to the Netherlands. And then my mom is of Mayan and Spanish descent.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's all I know.
My family went through Kentucky too, so we might be related.
Oh really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The you know what the Cumberland Gap
Kentucky.
is?
Yeah, Daniel Boone. No, that's.
I know who that is, but no, and to slam in the chat, that was like I was quiet, even if my mic wasn't working, so it was working.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. I'm really not from Kentucky, but I've heard of it.
Okay.
You know, a little fun fact about the Scots, since we were talking about them and mentioning the word savages. Do you guys know actually why Scotland is separated from the rest of the Celtic tribes?
Why is that?
Super fun fact about history. So the Romans were going up to conquer Britannia, as they called the island. And they made it all the way up to where modern-day Hadrian's Wall is. And the Pictic tribe that was up there was so terrifying that they built a wall to warn other Romans, don't go fight with these people.
Hadrian's Wall.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, that's a far push from.
Yeah, because they fought naked and painted themselves blue.
But I'm
They're
saying,
a bunch of savages.
the further they get from like reinforcements and stuff like that, the harder it is, you know. So
yeah, that too. It was partially that, but it was also just partially just the Pictic tribe of the Celts were just so violent. You know what I mean? Like, and not in like a warmongering way, but kind of similar to the Spartans. You know what I mean? Where it was just like these people they take war very, very seriously. And the Romans they spooked them. You know what I mean? They were like, we don't even want to mess with you guys.
It's not worth it.
No, they did.
Yeah,
they did take it seriously.
If William Wallace had his way, and the patriarch of the town hadn't have been so in the pocket of the Catholic Church and all that, it would have changed the whole British Isles.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and think about it too. I mean, you know, one thing that we often forget is that Scotland was never actually conquered. King James was the king of Scotland, and he also happened to be next in line for the English throne, and so that's why they unified. It's not actually, you know, it's not like Ireland where the British invaded Ireland and actually took it physically.
Right.
And it's just interesting to me because, you know, there's certain cultures throughout history that just there's just something about them, you know what I mean, when it comes to warfare. And Scotland seems to have been one of those cultures where it's just like these guys, they're tiny and they keep to themselves, but man, do they have a seriously bad temper as a nation.
Oh, yeah, you have like Genghis Khan.
Is that where
there was some crazy people?
Is that where I got my temper from? It must be where I got my temper from.
It's probably your time in Brazil, JJ. Because let me tell you.
No, but they also they tend to have long arms and they had long axes too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
JJ's
they
swimming
knew how
in
to
the
use the long
Amazon
axes.
with pink dolphins and electric eels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Brazilians,
Brazilians,
they're very emotional. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, let me tell you, I would.
Kinds of piranha.
Unless I was born there, I don't think I would ever go to Brazil. I'll be honest with you. Places where spiders fall out of the sky are a no-go for me.
It looks beautiful there, though. To be honest, it looks gorgeous there. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just like, man, it's just such an intense place to live. You know what I mean? Like literally everything in the forest wants to kill you.
It's like living in Australia for 9 years, like I did. Yeah, spiders that could just take you down with one bite. Done.
It's just intense, man. What were we going to say,
Yeah,
Jungle?
we have in the Amazon, they have the bird-eating spiders, tarantulas.
They have bullet ants, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, there's this guy here on YouTube, goes by the name of
And-
Brave Wilderness. Coyote Peterson. Anybody heard of him?
What's his name?
Coyote Peterson.
No.
This dude will literally go
I think
find.
I've seen him.
Yeah, he'll go find like bullet ants and black hornets and things like that, and just get stung by them. And he says it's for science, and it's like, okay, I mean, whatever you want to do, my guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
They'll
for
find
you.
the most painful torture possible, where they almost pass out, and then say it's for a good cause.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
You know what's crazy to me though? Like there's still tribes of mankind living in jungles like today that practice black magic and like it's just so crazy to me. Like it like we're like I'm so in this modern world where like I'm so separated from things like that. But there's people without phones, without TV, living in like the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's a big world.
No, they believe it and they practice it too. They actually do the rituals on the street corners and the sacrifices and everything. They do all that stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, and, a lot of I was just explaining to someone the other day. Speaking of, things like the debate I had today was the 10 Commandments, right? I was just talking to somebody the other day, talking about how like you think of all of these things that you think of as just granted morals. Like, for example, that racism is a problem, right? That's just a granted moral for you. But if you go anywhere else in the world outside of the West, the exact opposite is granted. Of course you're racist. That's just the way we all are. Obviously, we don't like the next tribe over. You're weird for liking the next tribe over, right? Or monogamy is another one, right? It's normal to be polygamous in other cultures, right? And so on and so forth. And it just kind of, in my opinion, it just goes to show how much more superior the Christian ethic is than so many of these other ones. I mean, even, you think of Buddhism. People love Buddhism. It's so peaceful and nice. But, if you actually study Buddhism, it's ferociously apathetic. Its ultimate goal is to die. Buddhists, if they're
Nirvana?
Yeah, exactly. It's to die and to not be reincarnated again, right? That's the goal. And it's like that's depressing. And or the whole Buddhists will very often the apathy one I think is a huge one, right? Because in fact, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a very popular show. So people have probably heard this quote that actually is from Buddhist teachings. Hope is only a distraction, right? And of course, it's not that there's not some level of philosophical truth that you might be able to find there or anything like that. But the point being that, like, they just outright shun the idea of being hopeful. That's horrifying. That's terrible, right? That causes people to be, well, exactly what they are in China right now, right? Apathetic, and they don't care, and they're just droning on throughout life until they eventually die and pass it on to their kid who does the same.
Yeah, I mean, hope is what drives humanity. There's hope. Our hope is in Christ. Like that's why we spread the gospel. That's why
hope of the resurrection.
It's just.
I mean, if we have life, we're living. What do we hope for? We hope for eternal life. That's what the logical progression is,
Yeah,
that's what you would hope for.
A world without hope is just, I couldn't even imagine.
For the things
terrible way to live. Yeah, people take for granted, Christian ethics, are basically the whole foundation of our society. They just take it all for granted. They're ready to just blow up the foundation of our entire society. They just want to blow it up and replace it with what? I don't know. Nothing. Human well-being, science, whatever nonsense they just spew.
Babylon.
Yeah.
Well, the way I look at I was just going to
Yeah,
say
they
the way
hope
that we
they.
look at the scientists of today, they're just the Pharisees and the Magi of old.
Science has nothing to do with
Yeah,
value at all. Science doesn't speak to value at all. Zero.
they
Doesn't speak
they
to
want they
morality,
want to
human worth.
destroy. They want to
It's just
destroy everything and then replace it with their utopia, which never pans out, never works out. It always turns into a nightmare.
yeah. That's a big question I give to atheists. I said, okay, you don't like Christianity. Okay, you think it's wrong. Okay, so tell me, what do you have to offer me? Okay, I'll take your
Right.
word for it. So now what do I do? Tell me, what do I have to hope for? What should we build our society upon? You have a better answer. Let me hear it. They get crickets. Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. Nada. Nothing.
Well, I mean, the in politics, they're trying to destroy everything so they can rebuild their utopia, which is never ever worked out in real life, in real history,
Yeah.
because it's not based on a foundation of, principles, things that are important.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's certain things that the Bible says that I think people would really, really do their hearts well to learn. And they're depressing things, but they're facts. So, like, for example, Jesus says, the poor will always be with you, right?
Wow. I was just going to say
come
that.
with an asterisk.
Wow.
Say again?
Just going to say it. I was just going to say the same thing, Sage. The same exact. I was just going to say the same exact thing. The poor will always be with us. Always.
Exactly. Always. It's not that they will be with us up until a certain point in time when everything's great and we sing a kumbaya, right? It's no, until the second coming of Messiah himself, we will have the
Yep.
poor. Or what's another one he
It's our
has? It's
duty.
sorry.
Taking care of the poor glorifies God. It does.
Yeah, exactly.
It's our duty. It's good. Like who could say that it's not good to care for the poor, to care for the sick? I mean, come on. It's like it's almost like an atheist knows this. It's good. They have to know it's good. They're not going to turn around and be like, no. You should just like, what are we going to kill them all? Of course they think it's good. They just have no reason to say it's good.
Well,
and the thing
they've done that kind of thing in the past.
Go ahead, Jungle.
They've done the kind of thing in the past where they go through and they kill people that they think shouldn't be there. That's happened quite a bit. Sorry, CJ.
No, you're good. I know you got a little bit of a delay here. But I was just going to say there's more of it too. In Ecclesiastes, when Koheleth, which is commonly believed to be Solomon, talks about how all is vanity and to all the same thing comes and everything is meaningless and all this, you know what I mean? And it's like the point kind of being that like we live in an age now where people, they think they can solve these problems. Even the idea utopia, right? It's like, no, we can fix it. And that right off the bat, you've already failed because you can't fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Solomon was the wisest man ever on earth, and he couldn't solve it. He just decided to get 700 concubines and make it more complicated.
Like our hope's not even in this world. It's just, I don't know. They don't get it. They just don't get it. It's so frustrating. What I tell myself is like when you hear these responses from atheists and they attack Christianity with these crazy, just dumb, like immature statements. Like Bronze Age goat herders, blah blah blah. Just so dumb. I mean, it's just it has become obvious to me. They're just like spiritually shut off. They're just blinded.
And you can tell when they start talking like that they never learned anything about Christian teaching or anything.
Yeah, I mean, they're just blinded.
They were
to
never
the truth.
educated.
Like it's obvious to me. Like they're just they're just pushing God away. They're refusing. They're just being stubborn. Whatever it is, they're just refusing. I mean, the truth becomes more obvious and obvious every day. Like you just see it. I don't know.
It's like sometimes you can just tell their education just by what they say. The things they say, the more they slam the Bible as being backwards and everything, the more you know that they were never educated.
You know, what's crazy to me is the older people, the people that have families, the people that are like just educated,
Yeah.
and they still speak about like God, like and the Bible, like they just act like children. It's just insane to me. Those people, I understand like the little punks, like the 18-year-olds, the 16-year-olds, the 21-year-olds that are out just trying to party and stuff like that. I get that because I lived that. But the older people with children, like I just don't see that. How can you look into like your child's eyes and tell them that there's no purpose to life?
Like off of that one,
Yeah.
I'll expound off that. The ones I tried religion. The genie wasn't in the bottle for him, I guess. I tried religion. Hey, Veckel, what's up?
Not much. What's going on?
Welcome.
What you guys talking about?
Well, the debate.
Whatever.
10 Commandments. Are they moral?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I recognize that atheist. I recognize his face. So who is he again?
Michael, the Canadian atheist. So he does a podcast called The Canadian Atheist, which is actually quite popular. It's roughly 5,000 to 10,000 views each episode. But besides that, here on YouTube, what he does a lot is debates, and he debated once. My first experience with him was him and Stephen Ryan from Cider and Port, formerly Religion's BS. They both debated John Maddox and Smokey Saint.
Yes. Now, yeah, I've had an encounter with that guy before. Yeah, now I remember. Yeah, pretty arrogant little dude, if I remember. At least from my impression.
He has him and John have a particular beef with each other. So I think that's primarily where that had come from there. Not to say that I take any sides on that, obviously, right? Because John Maddox is a friend of this channel and all that. But I know that they have vendettas against each other, right? So that might be a little bit of a situational.
Gotcha.
Talking to people right now.
Yes.
Did you catch the debate?
No, I saw the thumbnail that you guys were doing it, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it. So I just got out of Bible study. Thought I'd pop in real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on?
Let the child talk.
You want to say hi? Say hi. Of course, now she doesn't want to talk.
That's awesome.
Say hello. They can't see you. Okay. She wants to play with her toys. She wants me to play with her toys with her.
No.
Yes, you do.
No. Do schoolwork.
So
Do school.
one thing I did want to sort of ask around with the crowd, just while we're all sort of here, is there any of these positions where you think that there should be specific improvement on my part? Because I figure, those are the ones you typically don't hear are the harsh criticisms. So if I were to ask for them specifically.
I'm sorry, CJ. You're breaking up for me. I couldn't really hear it. You said, you want some criticism? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was anything in the debate that seemed like it was worthy of criticism on my part. Like anything that should have been improved.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to. I barely watched it. I caught that little thing that you talked of basically like the very end of the open discussion. That's all I caught of the debate. I was working, so I'll rewatch it and I'll let you know for sure. But
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't watch enough
to watch it again.
I mean, I'll just offer the same critique I gave you. You did very well. It's just you could have turned it around back onto him on several points, but you were probably thinking of something else, and you said you're a little bit off with some sort of a symptom or something like that, so it probably didn't catch it.
I mean,
But I'm not saying be totally aggressive. You could have flipped the argument back onto him in just a couple spots. That's all.
I mean, did he give a replacement, like an alternate to the Ten Commandments, or did he just
sort
say
of
like
gave like what he thought was like a collection of possible replacements? So he said that 1 through 4 and 10 he would want to replace, and potentially 5 also. So 1 through 5 and 10 he would want to replace, but he didn't say with what in particular, as much as he did give suggestions for what might potentially be. So like slavery and women's equality and things like that. But he didn't at any point in time actually say
women's equality.
Say again?
What? Did you just say he wanted to replace something with women's equality?
Yeah, he thought that women's equality would be something he might want to put on the
as a commandment.
Yeah.
What? Wait, I'm sorry. Is there a commandment where women aren't equal or something? Like, I'm lost on that.
Well, I would think
my
what
goodness.
he would probably argue from, and I can only go based off of what we said in the conversation there, but it would probably be that he sees the patriarchal nature of the Bible as well as the males only in pastoral leadership. He would probably see those as lack of equality. But to be honest, I would just argue that, right? I think that it was just...
He probably doesn't know that the possessions were passed down through the women, apparently.
Yeah, they just look at everything just wrong. They just have they look at everything through their modern eyes, like through the idea that like if a man is a leader, okay, that means like somehow a woman's less valuable. This is just like modern thinking, you know. Like this isn't. They equate leadership and roles with value, and it's not a value. Like if you work somewhere, your boss isn't more valuable than you as a human being. Like this is just a misunderstanding. You know, like your wife.
Exactly.
If you're the head of the household, your wife is not worth less than you. Like this is a total misunderstanding of what's being said.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too is so there's a comedian out there named Whitney Houston. No, not Whitney Houston. Whitney Cummings. Excuse me. Whitney Houston is the singer. Whitney Cummings, and she has a bit that really is eye-opening to me because she's not religious and she's not conservative and she's not traditional. She's just a comedian doing comedian stuff, right? And yet the bit is, if this place lights on fire and I'm sitting with my boyfriend, I am immediately looking directly at him. Like, what are we doing? And, you know, she obviously has all the humor that she throws in it. But the point there being that there's sort of a tacit admission there, right? That we're not saying anybody's more valuable. We're not saying anybody's more this, more that, more the other, right? However, we certainly recognize that the male in the crisis situation is the one you rely on, and the male in the leadership situation is the one you rely on. And there's no like you were saying, there's nothing in that implies inequality as persons. It's just different roles, right? Exactly.
Like they would never say like you know, it's like intuitively they know this. It's like I said, if you work for someone, yes, your boss has a leadership role over you, but no one would say that like he is more valuable as a human than you. Like obviously not. Even though the atheist doesn't have a reason to actually give to support that, but
right.
It's obviously not. You know, a woman, like God created man from the dust of the earth. Okay, literally, Eve is right from Adam's side, right? They're the same. I gotta go, guys. God bless you. Nice
All
talking
right.
to you.
Yep.
Okay.
God
Yeah.
bless you all.
Até mais. Até logo. Se
Bye bye.
cuida.
Yeah. Bone of
Ciao,
my
ciao.
bone, flesh of my flesh. And the two
Ciao,
shall
ciao.
become
Bye.
one.
Ciao,
Yeah,
ciao.
and I don't know. It's just one of these things where it's like it does seem to me like people equate roles with like a status almost, right? And I think that is I don't know. That's problematic to me, right? In fact, the boss example is such a perfect example because no, your boss isn't more valuable than you as a human being. There's nobody on the planet. No, I guess I can't say that. Very few people on the planet would believe that, right? And yet he clearly has a position that is different than yours. His role is different than yours, right? Perhaps his authority is greater than yours in certain aspects, but that doesn't mean anything as far as your equality, right? And I don't know. I don't get that one personally.
Well, we do have a culture
It's
now.
amazing how.
Yeah, the culture
It's amazing
now.
how they. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jungle. Go ahead, Jungle.
This is horrible. It's amazing how, like, they'll just not understand what the commandment is. You know, love the Lord your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself, and then say, "Oh yeah, we need a commandment about women." Well, that was already in there, you know, and it's conveniently they're going to throw out the commandment to love the Lord your God with all your heart, you know. So it's just the ironic thing is that they're trying to make it better and they're throwing out what's more important.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny too, actually, Michael did concede that portion, right? I asked him, it was like, all right, so you're a moral realist and you base your moral realism on well-being. If I base my moral realism on something else, in your opinion, will I be wrong at some point? And he said, yeah, of course, because your foundation's wrong. And it's like, exactly. There you go. If my foundation is wrong, I might build something that looks like a well-structured house, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Alex, you want to say something? Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to go with the physiology of, the psychology of, the sociology of. So you have many more betas and gammas than you have alphas. That's just how it works. But now there's way more betas. And what I mean by a beta is basically somebody who is not going to take the reins. They'll give you all the answers, but they're not going to back it up. It's basically a fault. Where an alpha will take charge and make an example. You may fail a couple of times, but you'll get back up. Whereas a gamma is the worst.
Right or wrong. Yeah, right or wrong, he'll take a position, right?
Right. The gamma is the worst because they pretend to be an alpha. It kind of comes into the realm where it's a false. It's worse than a beta, obviously, a gamma. So you have this personality trait that has been developed more so in a deceiving way, right? So they can kind of walk the walk, but they can't talk the talk, or they can talk the talk and not walk the walk. So it's a very different atmosphere out there. And with the gammas, what you'll find is a lot of fallacy.
Yeah.
They're more the trickster.
You mean more like a hit and run kind of person?
Exactly right. And they can only put up the act for a few hours. They're always the one that has to duck out. But the important thing of that is men especially have been conditioned in a way. And I'm sorry if single mothers out there take it the wrong way, but there are bad single mothers. And it's not just the fathers that are always bad. You know, there are bad mothers, bad single mothers that are raising children because deadbeat dads that left. I'm giving no excuse to anybody. I'm just saying that there's no male role. Your role is what you see at school. You know, your teacher may be a female or a male, but you're still subjected to that. And only the ones that are able to be molded into a decisive person that can take the hit, right, and keep on rolling without an excuse. Say, all right, I'm going to try harder next time. You know, yeah, I'll take that one for the team because, you know, I dropped the ball, whatever it may be. They'll not make an excuse. And the what I see in, you know, the society today when I do go venture out and I pay attention to people. I mean, that's my job. And I pay attention to how people act. The dating scene is all different. There's no, you know, most men are afraid to show affection to a girl because now they look like a pansy if you give them flowers, or it's a signal now. If you give a woman flowers, you know, that they're not the type of guy you want to date. You know, and it's kind of weird how the whole system has been, you know, in the last 30 years been molded towards a more, I want to use a word, but I'm not going to use it, but where you have more timid but sly ways of doing things. Yeah. And it's almost a character that, you know, a flaw that I see growing with less alpha males around. You know, and I'm not giving alpha males, they're called an alpha male for a reason in psychology. So anyway, that was my piece.
Yeah. But if everybody's misled and misinstructed, there's probably not going to be much of anybody that is going to be any good for a relationship anyway. I mean, it's even, I mean, if you can't find anyone in church, it's, you know, much less out in the world, you know. It's kind of hard sometimes.
Hey, Richard, shalom.
For someone, you know, like that. Shalom, Richard.
Peace and respect, gentlemen.
So,
hey, what's up? How are you?
I'm better than I deserve since 2012 and not expecting it to change.
Hey, that's a good answer.
Yeah. I feel blessed. I feel truly blessed above. That's not a proudful statement.
Did you ever
it's just the way it is.
Did you get any of the pandemic illness?
Myself, my family, no one I know.
Richard?
Oh,
okay. It's just a big headache, literally a headache. I mean, as far as I can tell.
I've noticed in our local community that there's a lot of people that are claiming to be alpha by calling others beta. And it strikes me that a true alpha male, and please feel free to disagree, I'd like to hear your inputs because maybe I need to change my mind about this. A true alpha male is one who has the strength to lift others up.
I'd agree with that, actually. And in fact, I would even say, I think that, you know, when you look at some of the most manly individuals that you can find in literature are found in the Bible, right? And very often, so for example, Jesus is a quite rugged man, actually, right? He wanders from place to place, walking, preaching. He's a working man, right? Being a carpenter, mostly defying people to their face, all that kind of stuff. And yet he's also very gentle, very sweet, very loving, right? And I kind of think, honestly, I almost think it's a failure in masculinity when you have the one without the other. So in that sense, I would agree with you, Richard, completely.
Yeah, if I'm really confident about what I am, then I don't need to showboat that. And confidence is an aspect of a true masculine male. And if I'm strong enough that I'm well taken care of, that I can take care of myself well, then I have some leftover to give to others, whether that's emotional support, financial support, physical support, security, any number of things.
Yeah. Well, you have a paradox or a contrast between the ways of the world and the teaching of God, in that, like in ancient civilizations, you had to take out the other person before he took you out. If he became any kind of a threat, you have to take him out before he takes you out. And yet there were even pharaohs, or at least a pharaoh, that refused to go to battle and would rather try to work things out with the enemy, you know. So, and of course, so the teaching of God is for the benefit of people, and the teaching of the world is the opposite, is for the benefit of yourself at the expense of everybody else, you know. So those are two drastically opposed perspectives on life, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what truly amazed me as an anti-theist, that is to say a hard atheist, was when I read of the Bible and found that it was true and started applying it to my life, how it worked so much better in reality than my atheistic and social structures, my secular social structures ever could have. That was actually quite shocking to me.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the interesting thing that I kind of discovered myself, because I was very into philosophy before I became a Christian, and you know, Buddhism and Islam and cynicism were sort of the big three. And I know Islam might sound weird, but I looked at Islam from a philosophical lens because I didn't believe in their deity. You know, it's funny because every now and then I'll, like, for example, I'll read something in Ecclesiastes and it's like, huh, you know, that's funny. That reminds me of being, you know, interested in the Buddha and listening to some of the stuff he would say. But it's amplified and so much better and so much stronger and so much more in depth, you know what I mean? To where it's like, it only becomes an afterthought. It's like, yeah, you know, I guess the Buddha did have a similar idea, but it doesn't even compare to what Solomon's putting in these pages. And, you know, and I've noticed throughout my life that continues. Like just the other day, I figured out the origin of the word avatar, right? An avatar is an incarnation of a deity. And it first shows up in the 400s AD in India. And Thomas showed up to India preaching the gospel in 70 AD. And, you know, it just goes to show that, like, even in the instances where people turn out to sound correct, like in the case of an avatar, they're waiting for an avatar, somebody to be an incarnate deity, right? That's true to an extent, but you're still not getting it, right? You've bastardized it with this Hinduism and stuff like that. And when you look at the Bible and what it talks about, now it comes to full clarity, right? And I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion, but
that was very well said, Richard. That was very well said. Glad that you found out what avatar means. It's a mask is what an avatar is.
Right.
Mask. Yeah. Good job, man.
Well, so I do notice we are hitting a little over the 3-hour mark here. I don't want to cut off anything in an inorganic way, so if anybody has stuff they want to say, definitely feel free to, but I just want to note we'll probably get close to the wind down here soon.
I'm good. Thanks for hanging.
Yeah.
Well, very good debate. Very good discussion. This has been awesome. Thanks for joining, Richard.
Thank you for allowing me.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't allow you to come in any time. It's not my channel, brother.
No, but I was thinking, you know, what Richard said was significant, because I've thought about this before, where suppose you have two different competing views or teachings. One is the more selfish view where you take out the other person before, and in order to protect yourself. So you go around teaching people, yeah, you got to take out the other person before he takes you out. You teach them that, or you can teach the person to build somebody up and to make them stronger and encourage people and like that. So eventually the teaching is going to come back around to you, rob and steal, all this rob and steal and take advantage. Somebody's going to come around with your teaching that you taught them to take advantage of the other person before he takes advantage of you. He's going to practice your teaching on you. Or
very real possibility.
The alternative is that they could, if your teaching was good about edification, then he's going to maybe save your life instead of take your life,
I think if we take these things to the extreme, they become obvious. Were I made of solid titanium and I were literally indestructible from any human, I would not go around picking fights with human beings. It would be pointless. There's no challenger. On the flip side of that coin, if I'm a 120-pound male American, I'm probably going to be really defensive and attacking everyone. So when I see someone attacking everyone, I think you must be weak.
Bingo.
Then you got the paranoia. Paranoia creeps in, and you're paranoid of everything, like the Herods and the rulers and all the kings and stuff. They're all paranoid, and they're horrible people too.
Amen. Absolutely. Thanks again, Synagogue. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for showing up here today. I appreciate you as well.
Yeah. Richard, that's the small dog, big dog syndrome.
There you go.
Small dog yelping all the time. Big dog just hangs around. Small dog decides to nip his tail. Crunch. See you later, small dog. It's but going back to what I said earlier, it's become more an unbalance, if you will, as far as, let's just go with father figure. I'm sorry if that's what I was going to say before. A lot of people are missing a father figure. They've taken the Boys and Girls Club out now. Boys Club used to be a place for kind of like a sanctuary for kids that didn't have fathers, and they would have time to play basketball, things like that, and instruction, learn certain things. That's all gone now. Now it's basically macrame and paste this and do that, like a big preschool. It's only when I go play basketball with some friends at the Boys and Girls Club up in Buena Park, that's what I see. I see, it's okay that girls and boys get together. I get it. But boys have to do boy things. All right? Girls do girl things. Boys do, boy things. And that's going out, learning, right? It's it's all a curve. And, finding out the bullies trying to take over the sandbox, because there is a bully and he's got a problem. He's actually a small dog in heart, but he's a big kid, but he's the bully. And then you have the other ones that kind of figure out, hey, we got to outsmart this cat, get him out of the sandbox so we can play in the sandbox. One of my favorite things as a kid was taking a magnet into a sandbox. That was awesome. Get that iron out of there. You know what I'm talking about.
Not that I want to lengthen your show too much, Synagogue, but have any of you gentlemen heard Jordan B. Peterson talk about play between male rats?
Oh my gosh, that is excellent. Good. Oh man, you pulled that one out. Good.
I have not actually.
So here's how it works. The smaller rat will invite the larger male to play, and the first time they play, the larger rat will wrestle down and pin the smaller rat, and showing dominance. But every time after that, the larger rat will let the smaller one win about 15% of the time.
Huh.
It's called play.
It's fair play.
That's interesting. I didn't know that actually.
And I think there's truth in that about our kind as well. that if you really were the alpha rat, you'd let the other one win sometimes.
Thank you for coming in the chat, man. Richard, I like hearing you.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too, actually. And it does seem, every time you show up, though, it does seem like it is towards the end. So I apologize for that. One of these days, we'll have a solid conversation.
Just my luck. We should schedule something. I like your brain. And Alex and Jungle as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely willing for that.
Yeah, I'm not going to start my own channel for probably another month. I've got some things to situate. It's going to be tied down, to certain topics. Can't get off topic. You can stray a little bit, but I'm thinking of, more of an evangelistic side than, I was on, I was on the Praise I Ams last night, and that was tough because he allows a lot of people in, but he also made these new rules. And I just found out Gavin is an old earth believer. I did not know that. Gavin Hurlman.
I didn't know that either, actually.
No, he ganged up on me, brother, last night.
Huh.
I was like, yeah. So anyway, I was just like, I was thrown back by that because I thought throughout the whole conversation, sorry to keep you, CJ, but it was just, I'm going to be starting up in about a month. I don't care about how many followers I have. It's just going to be an open forum. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we can have chats like this. This was very, very enlightening and very good.
Well, last night I had a splitting headache, so I had to get some rest last night. So I didn't.
Yeah, after you left,
participate
after
in
you
any
dropped
of that.
off. Yeah, after you dropped off, man, it was just like the sharks came, and I can't believe that guy denied Britannia. I can't believe that. I said it's on the freaking. Did you do world history in high school or something? It's right there. Roman Empire. That's what everybody studies. Roman Empire. And my thing was that Paul went to Britannia, which was very accessible through Spain, through Gaul at the time. But he goes, "Oh, Great Britain didn't exist during that time." And I said, "Look, I'm just using it as a location on the map, so you know what I'm talking about." And then I brought up Britannia, and it was a real mess. It really snowballed in just a big mess after that.
Don't you know that before it was called Great Britain, that before that there was just a black hole right there?
A black hole?
Yeah, there was a black hole right there. There was nothing existed at all. That's what.
What was it called? Memorial or something like that before it was Britannia. But there was just a black nothing. Maybe it was still underwater, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I guess maybe, yeah.
Because
it was there. It was there.
That's a talk for another time, man. That's interesting.
I mean, before it has a modern name, it doesn't exist. That's my point.
Oh, okay. I got you. Never mind. Yeah, okay. Just a place on a map. I hear you.
Yeah.
But the English Channel is very shallow.
It's interesting.
But yeah, so I'm gonna hop off. Let you guys continue, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for coming on. And shalom. Have a good rest of your day. God bless you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Talk to you soon.
Peace and respect.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to go so you can end your show there, CJ. Thanks a lot. And peace and respect to you both in Jungle Jargon. Have a great day.
Yeah,
absolutely. God bless you.
Me too. God bless everybody. And
all right.
Just stay close to God. Draw near to God, and He will cleanse you. That's all I have. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, amen. Amen. And man, it's always sort of I always feel kind of like a jerk because I accidentally end up cutting off Jungle because of the internet problems and stuff. But I understand it though. I've had some problems too. Nonetheless, though, I appreciate all you guys being here. I just want to briefly remind you guys, please do like, please do share, please do subscribe if you like this content. This did effectively end up being a 400 subscriber special in a way because we just hit 400 subscribers. So if you guys want to help us get over that now, then I certainly appreciate that. But we actually just hit it today. So thank you guys very much for that. Appreciate all of you. If you feel led, I do have my Patreon link in the live chat. Please do consider that, but only if you feel led. I want to earn this as a career, right? I don't want to force myself as to be an apologist or anything like that. I want to earn it, and earning it comes from earning it from the body. So only if you feel led should you by any means try that. But if you do, I certainly appreciate you. And then those of you guys who watch the majority of this or all of it, thank you very much. That's the very best thing you can do for the algorithm here. The last thing I'll say is God bless you. All glory to God. We will be back on with another episode at some point. I'm not 100% sure when, but I really want to talk about this new Gnosticism that I feel like exists. And I also want to respond to the Raging Atheist with his response to me and a couple other things. So we have some good ideas coming up here soon. Working on some other scheduled debates. But nonetheless, we'll see you guys when we see you guys. I appreciate you very much. God bless and shalom.